Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Els Van Doren. Els Van Doren is a 38-year-old Belgian woman married to a jeweler in Antwerp named Jan de Wild. They has two children, Vincent de Wild and Carol de Wild. Although she works in the family jewelry store, Elsa's real passion is skydiving. Els began skydiving with her husband in 1994. Gradually, her passion for skydiving grew rapidly over time. With over 2,300 jumps under her belt, she became an experienced skydiver. She devoted most of her weekends and holidays to the sport. In 1998, Els began skydiving in formation, and 3 years later, in 2001, she became a member of an all-female skydiving team called the Divas. The team competed in the 2003 World Parachute Championships, but Els was forced to leave the team in 2004 due to health problems stemming from a persistent hernia. After recovering, she turned to parachuting as a recreational activity instead of continuing to compete professionally. He became a member of the Swartberg Parachute Club, and by 2006, her jump total had exceeded 2,300. In the Parachute Club, she formed a close friendship with a fellow parachutist and schoolteacher, a 26-year-old named Els Clottemans. To differentiate between the two of them within the club, Els Van Doren suggested calling Els Clottemans by the nickname Babs. They both learned to parachute under the guidance of Marcel, another club member who knew both women. The trio developed a deep friendship and even became companions on their skydiving adventures. However, over time, Els found herself growing attached to Marcel, despite her husband. Their friendship gradually developed into a romantic relationship. Since her family was accustomed to her being away on weekends for the skydiving club, they did not suspect anything regarding her relationship with Marcel. Indeed, they often went to Marcel's apartment on weekends and stayed together without worries. Unbeknownst to Els and Babs, they not only shared the same name but also loved the same man. Marcel secretly maintained romantic relationships with both women. To keep the two relationships balanced, Marcel created a schedule. He devoted Fridays to Babs and Saturdays to Els. This arrangement initially worked to Marcel's advantage. However, it did not last long due to an unexpected event that occurred one particular weekend. On the evening of Friday, November 10, 2006, Babs went to Marcel's house as she did every week. At that time, she was unaware that Els had planned to surprise Marcel with an unexpected visit that night. Babs and Marcel had dinner together, and then they returned to Marcel's apartment. There, they found Els waiting outside the door. The content of their conversation is unknown, but it is certain that Babs did not sleep in the same bed as Marcel that night. Instead, Babs slept in a sleeping bag on the living room floor, while Els and Marcel went into the bedroom. In the living room, Babs discovered Elsa's parachute lying next to the other parachute equipment. She felt deeply hurt and betrayed that her friend had deceived and replaced her. These pent-up emotions pushed Babs to the point of committing a reckless act, leading to tragic consequences that no one could have foreseen. Then, on November 18, 2006, 12 members of the skydiving club, including Els, Babs, and Marcel, boarded a flight over Flanders. The plan was for Els, Babs, Marcel, and another skydiver named Tom to jump in a four-person formation at an altitude of 13,000 feet. In this formation, they would link arms before releasing and deploying their parachutes. As they prepared to jump, Els, Marcel, and Tom exited the plane as planned. However, it appears that Babs, perhaps due to a delay or on purpose, jumped a little later than the others. During the free fall, Babs was unable to catch up with the group. At 9,000 feet, Marcel, Els, and Tom broke formation, preparing to deploy their parachutes safely. At this point, it was clear that something serious had occurred, as Els tried to deploy her parachute by pulling the cord, but it refused to open. Trying to stay calm, she recalled the emergency procedures from her training. Having encountered a failed parachute before, she had successfully deployed her backup parachute on that occasion. However, in this case, hurtling through free fall at around 200 kilometers per hour, she had only 20 seconds or less to make a life-saving maneuver and land successfully. Despite her efforts, pulling the backup cord proved futile, and the parachute still did not respond. As her desperation grew, she continued to pull on both the main and backup parachutes, but there was no response. Marcel, who was at an altitude of 800 meters, observed Els, who was only 500 meters above the ground, and sensed that something was wrong because her parachute had not yet deployed. However, he could do nothing but watch the horrifying scene unfold. In a last desperate attempt, Els tried to untangle her parachute cord, hoping to activate it, but her fate was sealed. Meanwhile, in the town of Upabbeek, as these events unfolded, a woman was hanging her clothes out in her garden. A loud noise suddenly made her panic. Looking up, she witnessed a woman swooping down from the sky with a parachute aimed toward her garden. This sight was not unusual, as her residence was only a few kilometers away from the parachute club and its landing site. When she turned back to continue her laundry, the woman discovered a white cloth caught in the top of her bush. Moving closer, she saw a figure lying in the bushes. She quickly called her husband, who was also in the garden doing maintenance, and they contacted emergency services. It was Els, whom they assumed was one of the parachutists, but unfortunately, she showed no signs of life. Marcel, on the other hand, had found a safe landing spot, frantically calling for Els and trying to locate her. Spotting an ambulance, he gave chase, following it to the NEA RBY location where Els had landed. When he lunged toward her, he had to be restrained to allow the rescue team to approach. When the emergency services arrived, resuscitation efforts were made, but to no avail. Els was dead. Marcel insisted on keeping Elsa's parachute intact, stating that it was unusual that neither the main nor the backup parachute had opened. He then contacted her husband, Jan, to deliver the bad news. Jan rushed to his wife's side while Tom returned to the club to relay the sad news of Elsa's death to the other members. When news of Elsa's death was revealed, Babs, feeling overwhelmed, fell to her knees and cried bitterly. Elsa's husband, Jan, arrived at the club to collect her belongings and met Babs, who offered to help him retrieve Elsa's belongings. He observed her seemingly motionless and noticed a strange smile on her face. At that moment, Babs headed toward the dressing room, with Jan following closely behind. However, upon arriving, Babs abruptly slammed the door, locking Jan out. He recounted that it took Babs quite a while before she finally emerged with Elsa's belongings. Meanwhile, at the scene of the accident, police recovered Elsa's parachute and helmet, which was equipped with a video camera that recorded her fateful jump. An autopsy conducted to determine her condition but found no traces of alcohol or drugs that could have impaired her functioning. Her death was classified as either homicide or suicide, believed to have been caused by multiple fractures and internal bleeding from the impact of the fall. Elsa's family suspected that she might have been murdered by someone in her paragliding club who knew how parachutes worked. After the police revealed that Els had been having an affair with Marcel Summers for more than 5 years, the family's grief intensified. Jan was particularly hurt when he learned that other club members, some of whom he considered friends, also knew about the relationship. Additionally, Els had provided false information to her club friends, claiming that she was divorced from her husband. Her funeral took place just 1 day before her daughter Carol's 15th birthday. During the solemn ceremony, Carol was moved to share a heartfelt message. She recalled the family's constant advice to her mother to stop parachuting. Through her story, Carol clearly expressed how much her family missed her mother. She ended her speech by acknowledging her mother's desire for privacy and emphasizing that she would not have been happy to give up her hobby. After the funeral, the police launched an investigation due to growing concerns about the failure of Elsa's backup parachute. A parachuting expert familiar with parachute mechanics was called in to examine Elsa's parachute for any flaws or irregularities. The experts quickly discovered that a crucial component was missing: the pilot's parachute, a vital part of the system. The pilot's parachute plays a key role in deploying both the main and backup parachutes. The examination revealed that her parachute had been deliberately detached, suggesting outside interference. In addition, there were clear signs of tampering, notably with the main parachute, which the pilot was responsible for deploying, and one of the slings connected to the emergency parachute. When reviewing the final body camera footage of Elsa's jump, a striking detail emerged: an unidentified piece of red fabric hovering in front of her that was not part of Elsa's parachute equipment. Investigators are having trouble determining the origin of the red object, so they asked residents of UPAB to thoroughly check their gardens and the surrounding area. If they find the object, investigators advise them to handle it with care, as it may contain DNA from the person who sabotaged Elsa's parachute. Unfortunately, people were unable to locate this important piece of evidence. After Elsa's tragic death, an unexpected event occurred on Monday. Babs found the pilot's parachute. Babs reported that she discovered the parachute when returning from Marcel's apartment and that it had been stuck in a tree along the path between UPAB and Genk. Rather than contacting the police directly, Babs chose to inform Marcel of her discovery. Upon hearing this, Marcel called the police, who quickly arrived at the scene. When the police arrived, they found Babs anxious, confused, and clearly affected by the incident. However, they were skeptical of her story when she claimed that she had discovered the parachute by accident. She explained that it was a complete coincidence and that she had simply decided to take a different route home that day instead of her usual path. According to her account, while stuck behind a slow-moving tractor, she looked up and saw a parachute hovering about 20 meters above the ground, which made her think it might be a sign from the heavens from Els. However, the police were doubtful of this story, as only the investigators knew that the parachute was missing at the time. Meanwhile, the main suspects in Elsa's murder included her husband Jan, her lover Marcel, and her friend Babs. The police searched Marcel's house and concluded that he was not a suspect. They also ruled out Elsa's husband from the list of suspects. Next, the police expanded their investigation to Babs's house, where they seized many items, including Elsa's phone, laptop, and personal diary. These diaries had been recommended by a psychiatrist for Els to record her feelings. Babs was then asked to come to the police station for questioning to gather more information about her relationship with Marcel and Els, as well as to clarify the events leading up to Elsa's death. During questioning, Babs firmly denied any involvement in the destruction of Elsa's belongings. Instead, she attempted to blame Marcel, claiming that he had kept Elsa's belongings while she was at their home the previous weekend. She also accused Jan of keeping Elsa's belongings during the week. After the questioning, Babs was really asked and allowed to return home. However, a second questioning was scheduled for December 20th, 2006, but Babs did not show up. Subsequent investigations revealed that she had attempted to end her own life early that morning. After taking an overdose of sleeping pills and antidepressants, she became unresponsive. Her mother rushed her to the hospital for emergency treatment. In letters written before the act, she shared with loved ones the pain of losing her best friend and the overwhelming stress of being considered the prime suspect in the murder. Babs was then admitted to a psychiatric facility for observation and treatment for 15 days. Having long been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and depression, this was not the first time she had attempted to harm herself. Marcel believed she was merely trying to get attention and had severed ties with her. He thought her self-harm was a ploy to distract from her role in Elsa's death, rather than a genuine desire to end her life. Marcel suspected she had taken medication just before her mother returned home to create a dramatic situation. He believed the police were closing in on her and that they would arrest her once they uncovered her lies. At that time, while she was receiving psychiatric treatment, Babs was arrested on January 11, 2007, on suspicion of murder. On January 19, 2007, she appeared in court and was subsequently remanded in custody while the investigation was ongoing. Babs refused to take a polygraph test despite being asked to do so. Further investigation into Els Van Doren's parachute equipment revealed that the parachute cord had been deliberately cut with scissors. Based on the cut marks, it was determined that the person who cut the parachute cord was probably right-handed. By March 2007, Babs had been detained for 3 months and had undergone extensive interrogation. Despite the intense pressure, she refused to admit her guilt. During the interrogation, Babs confessed to sending an anonymous letter to Els, in which she acknowledged that her actions towards Elsa's family were wrong. However, this letter was misunderstood by Jan, who thought it was merely a criticism of Elsa's frequent absences due to her passion for parachuting. He discarded the letter without taking it seriously, but it was actually a warning that Babs intended to send to Els to end her relationship with Marcel. Additionally, Babs admitted to calling Marcel anonymously at a time when he was with Els, intending to intimidate them both. Investigators closely examined Babs's automatic activation device. Upon examination, they noticed that she jumped later than the other members of the group. However, her parachute activated earlier, allowing her to observe the events that followed from above. This strategic move also enabled her to locate Elsa's parachute, which she could retrieve later. In September 2008, Babs's lawyers successfully secured her bail, and although the case was still under investigation, she continued to work at the school. Babs's murder trial began on September 24, 2010. During the trial, the prosecution expressed confidence in the evidence they had gathered and believed there was sufficient evidence to charge her with murder. The defense argued that the murder was motivated by Babs's jealousy over her lover's relationship with her best friend. Babs had previously confessed to investigators that she knew she was second to Els in Marcel's eyes. She admitted that Marcel liked Els more than he liked her, which made her feel inferior. The prosecution suggested that her desire to eliminate her rival and remove Els from the relationship provided a plausible motive for the murder. Babs's defense attorney argued that the prosecution based their case only on circumstantial evidence and unproven claims. In her testimony, Clarence stated that she did not see a future with Marcel and that her intimacy with him was a result of her low self-esteem. She also tried to imply that Carol, Elsa's doll, Gaida might have wanted to get back at her mother for being absent most weekends. Despite her sincere efforts to persuade the jury and shift blame, the jury's verdict remained the same. On October 20, 2010, Babs, whose real name was Els Clottemans, was convicted of murdering her friend, Els Van Doren, and sentenced to 30 years in prison. She later appealed, arguing that the police had questioned her without her lawyer present. In May 2011, her appeal was denied. However, in June 2022, after a third appeal and serving 12 years and 6 months, Els Clottemans was granted conditional release from prison and is now free. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Stern. Sarah Elizabeth Sarah was born on March 24, 1997, in Neptune City, New Jersey, to Michael and Susan Sarah. As their only child, Sarah received all the love and attention from her parents, who had been unable to have more children due to health issues. Sarah grew up to be a lively, cheerful, and outgoing child. She was involved in various activities, including school theater, photography, drawing, swimming, and softball. Her passion was art, and she aspired to become an artist or designer. After graduating from high school, Sarah enrolled in a local college to pursue her dream. Tragedy struck in the autumn of 2013 when Sarah's mother, Susan, passed away after a long battle with cancer. Despite periods of remission, the disease ultimately took its toll. This devastating loss was a tremendous shock to the family, particularly for Sarah, who was extremely close to her mother. After a period of struggling with depression, Sarah began to support her ailing father and care for their beloved dog, Buddy. As time passed, her life started to improve, and she set goals for the future. Upon graduating from college, Sarah planned to apply to a prestigious university in New York. Before pursuing further education, she hoped to travel the world, with a particular interest in visiting Canada and possibly even living there for a while. Her father, Michael Sarah, frequently traveled out of state for work, often for weeks at a time. However, he never worried about leaving Sarah alone, as she was a grown and independent young woman, and their town was considered safe. But on the night of December 3, 2016, around 2:30 a.m., an unsettling incident occurred. A concerned citizen reported an abandoned vehicle on the Belmar Bridge along Highway 35, prompting the police to become involved. The area was usually deserted at night, which made the lone, empty vehicle stand out. A taxi driver, who was taking a shortcut home across the old bridge on the outskirts, noticed the car parked on the side of the road. He stopped to see if anyone needed assistance, but found the vehicle empty with no one around. Concerned that the driver might have jumped into the water below, a tragic occurrence that had happened before in this spot, the taxi driver called the police. Police officers responding to the scene found the car's keys in the ignition and no signs of blood or struggle, leading them to initially believe that the owner may have intentionally left the car on the bridge to jump into the river. To investigate further, they checked the car's ownership and discovered it belonged to 85-year-old Lily Sarah, who lived in a nearby town. When officers visited Lily's home, they found her alive and well. She explained that she hadn't driven the car in years due to poor eyesight, and her 19-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, was the frequent driver. Lily tried to contact Sarah but was unable to reach her because her phone was turned off. She then provided the officers with her son's address, where Sarah lived, and informed them that Sarah was likely alone, as her father was out of town for work and wouldn't return until the following week. Sarah was nowhere to be found at her home. Although the back door was open, an initial search of the house didn't turn up any signs of foul play. However, they did find the family dog locked in one of the bedrooms, whining. Despite the open back door, there were no signs of disarray or struggle, and no evidence of an intruder. As the news of her disappearance spread, Sarah's father, Michael, rushed back home on the next available flight. Upon his arrival, he confirmed that everything was still in its place and nothing was missing. Notably, all of Sarah's personal belongings, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, were still at the house. The police shared their initial concerns with Michael, suggesting that Sarah might have gone to the nearby bridge with intentions to harm herself. They asked if he had noticed any warning signs of suicidal tendencies or self-harm. Michael revealed that Sarah had struggled with depression after her mother's passing, but had made a full recovery with the help of loved ones and her studies. In fact, Sarah had big plans for her future, aspiring to become a designer and travel the world. To piece together what happened, the police needed to know who Sarah had contact with on the day she vanished, what conversations she had, and who saw her last. The first witnesses to come forward revealed that Sarah had spent most of December 2nd with her childhood friend, Liam McAtasney. As the last person to see her, Liam was a crucial part of the investigation. The police quickly decided to speak with him to gather more information and reconstruct the events of that day. When the police arrived at the McAtasney residence, they met with Liam's mother, who told them that her son was sleeping after a night shift. The officers asked her to wake Liam, who seemed confused about the situation. Once he was informed about Sarah's disappearance, Liam confirmed that they had spent the previous day together and agreed to go to the police station to give a statement. Liam shared that he and Sarah had attended college classes together that morning, but they decided to skip the last 2 lectures and go to her place to unwind instead. At her house, they played video games, chatted about their plans, and socialized. They briefly left her house twice to pick up food and visit a local supermarket. Liam left Sarah's house around 7 p.m. to go to his night shift job and did not see her again. Liam was also asked if Sarah had been struggling with any mental health issues. He explained that she had been battling deep depression since her mother passed away. He shared that Sarah often felt hopeless, wanting to escape or end her life, but he did not think that this meant she was planning to harm herself. He noted that she also struggled to connect with her father, leading to additional emotional strain. Liam considered it possible that Sarah's emotional state may have contributed to her disappearance. However, it was also clear that Sarah was planning a trip to Canada around that time and had recently exchanged money in preparation for her travels. Liam's testimony gained credibility when Canadian dollars were found in her bedside table drawer, though the amount was relatively insignificant. Preston Taylor, a close friend from high school, corroborated Liam's story. Preston mentioned that Sarah had struggled with depression, leading him to wonder if she had fled to Canada or taken her own life by jumping off a bridge. His emotional testimony underscored the strong bond he shared with Sarah. Despite these accounts, investigators soon ruled out the possibility of Sarah fleeing the country due to the absence of her passport. As a result, the search focused on the more distressing possibility of her having jumped to her death. A comprehensive search operation was launched along the river, involving divers, specialized equipment, and hundreds of volunteers, including police. However, strong currents posed a challenge, potentially carrying her remains or personal belongings far from the bridge, and thorough searches of both riverbanks were necessary to try to find any signs of Sarah. Among the volunteers searching for Sarah were her friends Liam and Preston. Despite their efforts, the search yielded nothing, prompting law enforcement to re-question those closest to Sarah. It was during this process that discrepancies in their accounts began to emerge. Sarah's friends and classmates described her as a happy and carefree person, with no signs of depression or problems with her father, whom she often spoke about affectionately. However, Liam and Preston's behavior after Sarah's disappearance raised eyebrows. They initially acted as if they had lost a loved one, gaining sympathy from many. But over time, their behavior seemed increasingly insincere, as if they were performing for an audience. The fact that Liam and Preston had only recently become close, about a month before Sarah's disappearance, raised suspicions and led the police to re-question them. Liam was visibly shaken when he was brought in for further questioning. The investigator asked him about his relationship with Sarah and Preston, and Liam explained that the 3 of them had grown up together on the same street and attended the same school. They were extremely close, sharing their deepest secrets and dreams with each other. Preston had even taken Sarah to prom, but they had never been romantically involved. Liam clarified that his relationship with Sarah was more than just friendship; he considered her like a sister. They had even listed each other as siblings on social media. Sarah had confided in Liam about her family, telling him that her mother had left her a significant amount of money in a safety deposit box at the bank. Sarah didn't trust her father, who claimed a right to the money, so she planned to retrieve it soon and move to Canada. However, when the investigator shared this information with Michael, Sarah's father, he provided a conflicting account. According to Michael, his wife had been saving money for Sarah's future since her birth, setting aside funds for education, a wedding, or a down payment on a house. The money had been stored at home in a shoebox, containing old and worn-out bills, but no one had thought much of it at the time. After Sarah's mother passed away, her father gave her a large sum of money, which he advised her to put in the bank. Sarah took his advice, dividing the money between her checking account for everyday expenses and a safe deposit box for the rest. She intended to use the money for graduate school and travel. Michael claimed he wasn't interested in the money for himself. When investigators discovered that Sarah had access to a significant amount of money, they began to suspect that her disappearance might be related to her finances. They decided to look into her financial transactions, including her bank account and safe deposit box. Their investigation revealed that Sarah had withdrawn a large amount of cash from an ATM just a few days before she disappeared, and had also accessed her safe deposit box at the bank around the same time. The detectives were in for another surprise when they reviewed the bank surveillance footage, which showed that Sarah was not alone when she visited the bank on December 1st. Liam was with her, raising questions about why he hadn't mentioned this earlier. When asked about it, Liam explained that Sarah had confided in him about her banking activities and had asked for his accompaniment because she was nervous about carrying a large sum of cash. Liam's hesitation was evident, but his story seemed plausible, and his demeanor appeared genuine. Further investigation led to the discovery of a security camera in a neighboring house that had captured footage of the street and Sarah's yard. The footage confirmed that Liam had stayed at Sarah's house until 7 p.m., then left for work and didn't return. Meanwhile, the silver sedan was seen leaving the garage around 11 p.m. This new information added a chilling twist to the already disturbing case. In a surprising turn of events, an acquaintance of Sarah's named Anthony walked into the police station about a month after her disappearance. Unaware of the recent events, Anthony had been out of town for several weeks. He shared a peculiar story that sent shockwaves through the investigation. It turned out that Anthony had gone to school with Sarah, Liam, and Preston, and after graduation, he had pursued a passion for filmmaking, keeping in touch only with Liam, who also shared his interest in cinema. Anthony remembered that about a month and a half before Sarah disappeared, Liam visited him and they spent an evening brainstorming ideas for a horror movie aimed at teenagers. Liam came up with a plot about a girl who shares a secret about a large sum of money with her friend, who then gains her trust and kills her, dumping her body in a river. Anthony thought the idea was good, and they even wrote a few pages of the script. After that, Anthony moved on to another project and forgot about the story. He then left town to work on a film as a camera assistant. When he returned, Liam unexpectedly called him and asked if the police had contacted Anthony. Anthony was surprised and had not heard that Sarah was missing, so he decided to go to the police. After hearing a new witness's testimony, the police asked Anthony to try to get Liam to confess by drawing him into a conversation. Anthony agreed and a plan was set in motion. He would invite Liam to work on a project that required renting expensive camera equipment, which they would pretend they couldn't afford. Liam had ambitions of being in a movie, so the police thought he would likely jump at the chance to make his dream a reality, especially if it meant using the money he had taken from Sarah. They decided to test him by setting up a sting operation. Anthony, a friend of Liam's, was asked to pretend to have connections in the film industry and offer him a deal. Anthony met with Liam and suggested they discuss the details in person. Unbeknownst to Liam, a hidden camera had been installed in Anthony's car to capture any incriminating evidence. When Liam got into the car, he looked around nervously, as if he suspected something was off. He then handed Anthony an envelope containing $2,000 in cash and asked if it was enough to rent the equipment they would need for the movie. Anthony agreed, and then asked Liam where he had gotten the old bills. Liam hesitated before admitting that the money belonged to Sarah, and that he and his friend Preston had taken it from her house because, in his words, the dead don't need it. Although Liam didn't provide any further details, his admission was enough for the police to arrest him and his friend Preston on suspicion of a crime. Preston, Liam's accomplice, quickly began cooperating with the authorities and struck a deal with the prosecution. He told them that he hadn't directly participated in the crime, but had helped Liam cover his tracks and get rid of Sarah's body. According to Preston, Liam started plotting to take Sarah's money as soon as he found out about it. Sarah had kept her inheritance a secret, even from her closest friend, for a long time. However, when she began making serious plans for a trip to Canada, Liam asked her how she intended to pay for it, and she revealed that she had inherited a sum of money from her mother. Liam then persuaded her that it would be safer to store the money in a home safe rather than a bank vault, and he urged her to withdraw the cash. Liam, determined to carry out his plan, waited for the perfect opportunity while Sarah's father was away on a business trip. He enlisted the help of his friend Preston, promising him $25,000 in exchange for his assistance. Liam had Sarah withdraw a large sum of money from the ATM, but didn't check the exact amount. They spent the next day together, waiting for the right moment to strike. When the time came, Liam separated Sarah from her dog by locking it in another room, then approached Sarah from behind and attempted to strangle her. However, the crime proved more difficult than Liam anticipated. Sarah, being physically strong and athletic, resisted fiercely, resulting in an intense struggle until she eventually lost consciousness. But despite his best efforts, Liam was unable to determine whether she had truly succumbed. Sarah continued to show signs of life, leaving Liam to prolong his efforts to ensure her demise. This took nearly 30 minutes. Only when Liam was certain Sarah was dead did he leave her house, going about his normal routine by heading to work. He then had Preston follow up on his original instructions, no doubt aiming to ensure their sinister act would go unnoticed. Liam McAtasney snuck into Sarah's house through the back door, avoiding the camera's view, and dragged the body to the garage. He then cleaned up the room to remove any evidence. A couple of hours later, he returned to the house, took a small safe from Sarah's room, and placed the body in the car. Liam drove away carefully to avoid being caught on the neighbor's camera. He met Preston at a bridge, where they transferred the body to Preston's car and then disposed of it in a nearby river. After disposing of the body, they cleaned the car and drove back to Liam's house to divide the stolen money. However, they were disappointed to find only $110,000 in the safe. They decided to be cautious and not spend the old bills immediately to avoid raising suspicion. Preston buried the safe in a local park, and they only spent the money Sarah had withdrawn from her account. During the trial, Preston confessed to the crime, but Liam denied any involvement and tried to shift the blame to his friend. Liam's lawyer also claimed his client was innocent, suggesting that Preston acted alone. The case was complicated by the fact that Sarah's body was never found. When police searched Liam's house, they found a small key that fit the buried safe, which was identified by Preston as evidence of Liam's guilt. The trial of Liam McAtasney lasted over 2 years. Despite the fact that Sarah Stern's body was never found, the evidence presented in court proved McAtasney's guilt. This evidence included a script he had written months before the crime, a key to a safe found in his home, incriminating statements he made in the car, and old bills he had given to someone. Furthermore, fingerprints belonging to Liam and his accomplice, Preston Taylor, were found inside the safe. A co-worker of Liam's also testified that he had been absent from work for a few hours on the night of the crime and had asked someone to cover for him. As a result of the trial, Liam was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Preston, who had not directly participated in the crime, received an 18-year sentence for obstructing justice and hindering the investigation. Preston will be eligible for parole in 15 years. Unfortunately, Sarah Stern's body has still not been found. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marcos Matsunaga. Marcos Matsunaga was a successful Brazilian entrepreneur who inherited a family business that became one of the largest food product companies in the country. The company, Yoki, was founded by his grandfather, Yashizo Cadano, who immigrated to Brazil and started a small flour milling business in the mid-20th century. Over time, the company grew and transformed into a global brand with a wide range of products. Marcos was born into a wealthy family and was accustomed to getting everything he wanted from a young age. Marcos didn't have to start from scratch to build his business, as he inherited the family food company from his grandfather and father. As the CEO, Marcos had the opportunity to become the first billionaire in his family, a goal he pursued for most of his life. However, this ambition was not meant to be fulfilled. Those who knew Marcos personally described him as a skilled and successful businessman who not only preserved but also significantly increased the family's wealth, boosting profits. However, he was also known for being difficult to work with, having a strong personality, and being controlling towards those around him. Marcos was not handsome, he was obese since childhood. He had to wear glasses due to vision problems, short stature, and somewhat clumsy. All of these caused Marcos a lot of problems when communicating with friends, leading to a lack of friends and isolation. Despite his wealth and business success, Marcos found it difficult to establish a meaningful relationship. His arrogance and egoism often repelled women, making it hard for him to connect with someone beyond a few dates. Consequently, he frequently relied on the services of escorts, as his wealth and status were not enough to make him a desirable partner. Very little information is publicly available about the entrepreneur's first wife. What is known is that their marriage was not based on romance or passion, but rather necessity and family pressure. The marriage endured for several years, although both spouses soon came to regret their decision to start a family. Initially, the young wife tried to accommodate her husband's complicated personality, hoping they would eventually form a supportive and loving partnership. However, her expectations were unfulfilled, and they gradually grew further apart. The businessman primarily sought companionship on websites where women offered intimate services in exchange for money. Elise was one of these women, a call girl with profiles on multiple platforms. He came across her profile, a gorgeous blonde with a great figure, and began booking her services regularly, paying her handsomely for their time together. Elise was 6 years younger than him. She grew up in a poor and troubled home in a crime-ridden part of the city. Her family life was unstable, she never knew her father, her mother struggled with addiction, and her mother's partners often had similar issues. As a result, Elisa's childhood was marked by hardship and unhappiness. She was frequently beaten, harassed, and abused by her mother's partners from a young age. As soon as she finished school, Elise left home and never looked back. She pursued a career in nursing, landing a job at a hospice after completing her training. However, she soon realized that caring for terminally ill patients was not her true calling. Elise formed strong bonds with her patients. A few years later, Elise decided to pursue higher education and switch careers. She chose law, which she saw as a promising field that would open doors to new opportunities. After lengthy preparation, she scored well enough on the entrance exams to gain admission. However, she struggled to pay tuition fees with her limited income as a nurse. Since Elise had no family support, having cut off ties with her relatives after leaving home, she had to fend for herself. To make money, she decided to take advantage of her appearance. She registered on a website that provided intimate services, where she was helped to create an attractive profile. Soon, wealthy customers began to notice Elisa's beauty. Elise worked as an escort to finance her studies and support herself. Once she completed her education and secured a job in her field, she planned to leave the sex work industry. That's when she met Marcos, a regular client who showered her with gifts and openly met with her. Unbeknownst to Els, their relationship would take a dramatic turn. Marcos, a wealthy married man, would eventually leave his wife for Els, transforming her rags-to-riches story into a real-life fairy tale. Marcos completely lost himself over Els, but it's unclear whether Els actively pursued him or not. After about 6 months, Marcos realized he didn't just want to date Els, but to be with her long-term. Without hesitation, he filed for divorce from his first wife and began introducing Els as his fiancée to everyone. Marcos, as a businessman, preferred to keep the true nature of their relationship and Els's occupation private. So, they came up with a cover story, claiming they met by chance at a cafe. They stuck to this story, even with Marcos's closest relatives and friends, who remained none the wiser. When Els joined the Matsunaga family, she didn't exactly receive a warm welcome. Her in-laws suspected that she had used her charm to win over Marcos, an older, wealthy, but not particularly attractive man. They believed she was now pretending to ignore his abrasive personality in order to secure her new status. Despite their reservations, no one strongly opposed Marcos's decision to divorce his first wife and marry Els. A lavish, traditional wedding was planned, complete with a white wedding dress, numerous guests, and a multi-tiered cake. Afterwards, Marcos moved his new wife into his grand, luxurious mansion, where she became the lady of the house. Matsunaga was a well-known collector of luxury items, particularly expensive wines and rare weapons. His house featured a large wine cellar, where bottles were meticulously organized by year and country of origin. Additionally, the house had a secret room dedicated to his collection of firearms and edged weapons, which were proudly displayed on the walls from floor to ceiling. Marcos took great pride in his extensive collections and was always on the lookout for new additions. His home was a treasure trove of antiques, luxury items, and modern art, which were displayed throughout the house, often in a way that was more cluttered than curated. Soon after the wedding, they decided that they were ready to have an heir, but despite all their efforts, Els did not get pregnant naturally. Then they decided to resort to the procedure of in vitro fertilization, but even here, success awaited them far from immediately. However, when their daughter was finally born, their joy knew no bounds. They devoted themselves to raising their child, making plans for her future, and as she grew older, the family began to travel the world, immersing themselves in different cultures and traditions. Their daughter was a beloved and pampered child, raised with love, care, and every luxury imaginable. When Els entered his life, she surprised him by showing a willingness to learn about hunting. Together, they visited shooting ranges, where she became proficient in handling firearms. Eventually, they ventured into the woods to hunt wild animals. Els approached hunting as a competitive challenge, unfazed by the act of taking animal lives. Marcos appreciated her mindset and enjoyed watching her skillfully wield her weapons and stalk prey. Marcos taught Els various outdoor skills, including how to skin and carve wild animals such as boars, deer, and other forest creatures. Together, they would dissect the animals using large knives, cleavers, and axes to separate the body parts. Unconventionally, the family did not keep traditional pets like cats or dogs. Instead, they kept poisonous snakes in specially designed terrariums that mimicked their natural habitats. This was a long-held dream of Marcos, who had a passion for snakes, but his first wife had never approved of the idea of having a terrarium in their home. Els had successfully adopted Marcos's unusual hobbies, which had grown on Els. In the spring of 2012, Marcos was on the verge of making a significant deal that would take his wealth and career to a new level, potentially making him a billionaire. He was in active negotiations with several partners to sell the family business and invest the substantial proceeds in a new and profitable venture. On May 19, 2012, the day before a billion-dollar deal was set to close, entrepreneur Marcos vanished without warning. His wife, Elise, didn't report him missing until the next day because she thought he was at work. According to Elise, Marcos had a meeting scheduled for the evening that was expected to run late into the night. He had packed some belongings and told her he would likely spend the night at the office before heading straight to the deal the next morning. When Marcos failed to return home and stopped answering his phone the next day, Elise grew concerned and reported him missing. The police quickly discovered that the entrepreneur had missed an evening meeting and a crucial morning meeting that he couldn't afford to skip. This led to immediate speculation that the millionaire had been kidnapped, and it was likely that his family would receive ransom demands in the coming hours. However, 24 hours passed, followed by another day, with no ransom demands received. As a result, hopes of finding Marcos alive began to dwindle. Meanwhile, investigators were actively questioning the businessman's relatives, friends, and business partners to identify potential enemies and determine who could benefit from his disappearance or the disruption of the impending deal. Despite a thorough investigation, no one has found anyone who would have wanted to kill Marcos. He was a capable and forward-thinking businessman who made strategic decisions that often benefited everyone involved. Days later, Elise visited her in-laws with her daughter and revealed a secret she had been too afraid to share with the police. With tears in her eyes, she explained that her husband had been having an affair with a woman named Natasha Villalima and had made no effort to hide it. Although the situation had led to several heated arguments and threats of divorce, Marcos had eventually promised to end the affair in order to save their family. Marcos continued to see Natasha, but was more cautious to avoid another family scandal. However, Elise suspected he was having an affair and hired a private investigator to gather evidence. The investigator obtained photos and videos of Marcos's romantic dates with Natasha. Notably, he took Natasha to the same restaurants and entertainment venues that he and his wife frequented, where he was very popular. It seemed that Marcos was deliberately showing his disdain for his wife and openly cheating on her without any attempt to hide it. It was later discovered that Natasha Lima was found on the same intimate services website where Marcos first met his wife, Elise. They dated for about 5 months, during which time he showered her with expensive gifts, including a luxury car, and paid her a large sum of money to delete her online profile. Meanwhile, Elise discovered incriminating photos and videos of Marcos's infidelity and showed them to his parents. She also revealed that she had confronted Marcos with the evidence just a day before his disappearance, but instead of apologizing, he abruptly packed his things, informed Elise that he was leaving her, and disappeared without a word. According to Elise, Marcos had simply given in to his passion and abandoned his life to be with his new mistress. However, those who knew him best vehemently disagreed, insisting that Marcos would never abandon his business, which his family had spent decades building, as he was deeply invested in its success. A gruesome discovery was made by a passerby about a week later, when scattered garbage bags were found in a remote area approximately 100 kilometers from the missing Marcos's house. Upon examination of the bags, police discovered human remains which were identified as Marcos Matsuniga, a person for whom an extensive national search was ongoing. Forensic examination concluded the victim had died as a result of a shot to the head before the perpetrator cut and packaged his dismembered remains. Expert assessment also inferred that only an exceptionally skilled practitioner would possess sufficient know-how, steady-handedly controlling either precise butcher's cut tools at convenient knife handles anatomy. The investigation began by reviewing the last known location of the deceased man, Marcos. This led authorities to the luxury residential complex where Marcos lived with his wife and daughter. The complex was equipped with multiple security cameras, which were thoroughly examined. A review of the footage revealed that the evening before Marcos disappeared, he and his wife had ordered food delivery. The elevator camera captured Marcos going down to the first floor to collect the food, returning with pizza boxes in hand. He then entered his apartment and was not seen leaving again that evening, night, or the following day. It appeared as though Marcos vanished into thin air. Els leaves their apartment with 3 large, heavy suitcases. Investigators, who already had suspicions, take her into custody for questioning. At first, she denies any involvement in her husband's disappearance, sticking to her initial claim that he left her for another woman. However, when shown footage of her moving the suitcases, she breaks down and confesses. According to her, their marriage had been troubled for some time, and her husband had become increasingly abusive. Marcos would constantly humiliate her, criticize her for her past work as an escort, and claimed that she was a bad mother to their daughter. Marcos exerted total control over his wife Els, not even allowing her to make friends. When she once mentioned divorce, Marcos threatened to leave her with nothing, take their child, and prevent her from seeing him. On the evening of the incident, Els showed Marcos pictures from a detective, which depicted him with his mistress. Instead of remorse, Marcos became enraged and slapped Els. She claims that everything after that was a blur. The next thing Els remembers is holding a gun, which she used to shoot her husband. Upon realizing what had happened, she decided to dispose of the body to make it seem like Marcos had vanished. Els drew upon her experience as a nurse and knowledge of human anatomy to do so. Additionally, Marcos had previously taught her how to skin and dismember animal carcasses, and they had the necessary tools at home. After Els killed her husband, she dismembered and bagged his body while their young daughter slept in the next room. It was later discovered that the evidence of her husband's infidelity, which included photos and videos, was only received by Els on May 20th, after she had already murdered him. This evidence was provided by a private detective. Els then used this evidence to deceive her husband's parents, telling them that he had abandoned her for his mistress. The investigation also found Natasha Lima, who testified in court that Marcos had wanted a divorce but was afraid of Els due to her alleged mental instability and capability for violent behavior. Natasha last saw her lover the day before he disappeared. He was unhappy about the constant family scandals and planned to start a new life in Florida after selling the company. However, his wife Els was not part of these plans. He intended to divorce her and forget her completely. A shocking twist was the discovery of blood in the lungs of the deceased Marcos. This suggested that Marcos was still alive when Els decapitated him, indicating he had struggled to breathe. This contradicted Eliza's claim that he died instantly from a gunshot wound. Further examination by the pathologist revealed that the bullet had entered Marcos's head at an unusual angle. It seemed he was caught off guard, sitting or lying down when shot, and didn't try to defend himself. Els Matsunaga's claim that her husband attacked her and she defended herself was disputed by multiple witnesses at her trial. They testified that Marcos had a difficult personality and often spoke harshly, but he never physically harmed anyone. As a result, the court believed Els fabricated the story and found her guilty of premeditated murder with cruelty and attempting to conceal the crime. She received a 20-year prison sentence, which many considered too lenient. Her in-laws now care for their daughter. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Brianna Zunino Dennison. Brianna Zunino Dennison, born March 29, 1988. Brianna's parents are Jeff and Bridget Dennison. When Brianna was 6, her father passed away, causing immense pain for the family. However, with the support of her loved ones, she persevered through the difficult time. Brianna spent her childhood in Reno, Nevada, and Mendocino, California, her mother's hometown. Her love of travel and exploration took her to numerous countries, including Hawaii, New York, Mexico, Jamaica, Japan, Italy, Egypt, Hungary, Austria, and France. Brianna has a deep affection for children and animals, especially her dog Ozzy. She completed her high school education at Reno High School in 2006 and is majoring in child psychology as a sophomore at Santa Barbara City College. During winter break, on January 20, 2008, Brianna returned to her hometown of Reno from Santa Barbara to spend time with friends and family. Brianna and her friends regularly attended events organized by Summer Winter Action Tours LLC, a tour company that caters to college students. They also attended the Martin Luther King Jr. Gala weekend in Reno. That day, Brianna returned home around 4 a.m. to her friend's house near the University of Nevada campus. Brianna slept over at McKay Court's house. However, when McKay Court woke up the next morning at around 9 a.m., Brianna was no longer there. A small bloodstain was found on the pillow where she had slept, and her cell phone, purse, and shoes were still at the house. McKay Court then contacted Brianna's parents and the local police in an attempt to locate Brianna. Police arrived and examined the scene. In the following days, police conducted forensic tests at the McKay Court home, where Brianna had been staying at the time of her abduction. During the investigation, police discovered DNA on the doorknob that belonged to an unidentified male. The blood on the pillow was confirmed to be Brianna's, leading police to focus on a theory that Brianna had been abducted. Police searched for Brianna in the University of Nevada Reno area, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the search. A DNA sample found on a doorknob the night Brianna disappeared was matched to at least 2 previous sex crimes in the same area. One occurred on November 13th, and the other on December 16, 2007. On January 29, 2008, a Reno woman said she knew a victim who had been held at gunpoint in a garage on the University of Nevada Reno campus in October 2007. Police released a description of the suspect based on identifying information provided by women who were sexually assaulted by the suspect. In an effort to find Brianna's abductor, police interviewed nearly 100 sex offenders who lived within a mile of the McKay Court home. However, none of them were linked to Brianna's disappearance. A search effort was organized, with some 1,700 volunteers, including then First Lady of Nevada Dawn Gibbons, participating in a virtual search of the area. Sadly, the search yielded no results. On February 15, 2008, a man named Albert Jimenez was returning from his lunch break at a Subway restaurant in Reno. As he walked down the street, he noticed bright orange sheets standing out among a pile of discarded tree branches in a ditch near Reno Business Park. Upon closer inspection, Albert discovered that the orange socks on the feet belonged to a deceased woman. Albert had heard about Brianna Denison's disappearance but initially thought the description did not match the person on Brianna's missing person flyer. Without a cell phone, Albert rushed back to his workplace to contact the police to report the incident. Police arrived at the scene and confirmed the victim's identity as Brianna Denison. The investigation revealed that Brianna had been brutally attacked and murdered. Near her body, police found a pair of panties, which contained DNA from the perpetrator and DNA from an unidentified woman. Police suspected that the panties did not belong to Brianna, believing that they had been left there to distract police. Police then made a public appeal, asking anyone who recognized the panties to come forward to help identify the perpetrator. However, no one came forward. On November 25, 2008, James Michael Bella, 27, of Sparks, Nevada, James was arrested while he was taking his son to the Stepping Stones Children's Center in Reno. He was booked into the Washoe County Jail on charges of murder, first-degree kidnapping, and sexual assault. Further investigation revealed that James was a former Marine with a history of violence, including a 2001 arrest for threatening his ex-girlfriend's neighbor with a knife. The following day, November 26, 2008, the Reno Police Department held a press conference to confirm that James' DNA matched the DNA found at Brianna's crime scene. During the press conference, it was also revealed that a friend of James' girlfriend anonymously accused James, through the secret witness program on November 1, 2008, after James' girlfriend confided in the friend that she had found underwear in James's truck while they were returning from Washington, where James had taken a job in March 2008. After reports of Brianna's case appeared in the media, including a police sketch of the suspect and a description of a vehicle involved in a similar incident a month earlier, police began questioning James, anonymously provided by a witness. However, James denied any wrongdoing and refused to provide a DNA sample for analysis. His girlfriend was also questioned by police, and she allowed them to take a DNA sample from her and James' 4-year-old son. DNA testing of James' son showed that, in this case, James' DNA was left at the house where Brianna was abducted and at the scene of the rape. Furthermore, during the trip to Washington, it was discovered that James had sold his truck in Idaho, which matched the description of the vehicle used in the sexual assault. Police announced at a press conference that the truck was being transported back to Reno for a thorough examination and would be used as evidence in the case against James. On May 27, 2010, the jury returned a guilty verdict in James's trial, finding James responsible for the murder of Brianna Dennison. After 9 hours of deliberations, the jury convicted James of kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. In an effort to avoid the death penalty, James' defense team presented mitigating circumstances, citing James' traumatic childhood with an alcoholic, abusive father. The jurors rejected the mitigating factors and gave James the death sentence instead. Later, on July 30, 2010, James received 4 more life sentences for other crimes, including rape and kidnapping of 2 victims prior to Brianna's abduction and murder. James's appeals have been denied over. The case of Brianna Zunino Dennison is a story of pain, strength, and determination in the pursuit of justice. Brianna's family remains strong and persistent in the fight for justice. The collective efforts of everyone together make a safer world. And may Brianna rest in peace. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marta del Castillo. Marta del Castillo was born on June 19, 1991, in Seville, Spain, to parents Eva Casanova and Antonio del Castillo. At the age of 17, Marta was a normal high school student like everyone else. Then her life changed completely. On January 24, 2009, Marta was in the middle of a conversation with her best friend, Sylvia Fernandez. She abruptly ended the conversation, explaining that she had to leave quickly because her boyfriend, Miguel Carcano, was waiting for her downstairs. Marta told Sylvia that she needed to talk to Miguel to clear up some issues in their relationship and promised to fill her in on everything when she returned. Marta ran into her father in the hallway and he advised her against getting on Miguel's motorcycle. In response, Marta just gave her father a light kiss on the cheek. She left her home at 5:30 p.m., and as the hours passed and she failed to return, her family started to worry. Marta's mother reached out to several people, and they all gave the same answer: Marta was probably with Miguel, who would likely know where she was. However, when they tried to contact Miguel, he didn't answer their calls. As a result, Marta's father decided to visit Miguel's house. Despite ringing the doorbell multiple times, no one answered the door. They eventually got in touch with Samuel Benitez, a close friend of Miguel's who claimed to have seen Marta that night. According to Samuel, Miguel dropped Marta off at his house at midnight, which was plausible considering it was only 11:45. Marta's family became more worried, and at 2 a.m. that morning, they reported her missing to the police. At that point, they had no idea that Marta's disappearance would become one of the most highly publicized cases in the country's history. 4 hours after Marta's disappearance was reported, the police identified Miguel Carcano, Marta's boyfriend, as a suspect. Despite this, a third report was filed at 1:30 p.m. But the authorities failed to take immediate action. The family grew increasingly frustrated with the delay. However, 17 hours after the initial request for help, the police initiated a search for Marta. As time went by, Marta's family took matters into their own hands and started collecting statements from Marta's relatives and friends. They also organized a press conference on January 27, 2009, and initiated a campaign to find her. A large protest took place in Seville the day after Marta's disappearance, with 2,000 people demanding her safe return under the slogan, "We are all Marta." A second demonstration on February 7 drew around 3,000 people, and the case received widespread media attention. After 21 days of searching, the police finally found Miguel Carcano on February 13. The 20-year-old confessed to Marta's murder and revealed that he had dumped her body into the Guave River near his apartment. However, he claimed he did not act alone and implicated Samuel Benitez as an accomplice in disposing of the body. Samuel accepted responsibility for his role in the crime. Further investigation led to the identification of additional accomplices, including Francisco Javier Garcia Marin, aka El Cuco, a troubled minor, Francisco Delgado, Carcano's brother, and Maria Garcia, Francisco Delgado's girlfriend. All 5 suspects were arrested and interrogated, but their statements were inconsistent. Meanwhile, a thorough search for Marta's body in the river began. On February 16, Miguel repeated his statement to a judge claiming he had only admitted to the crime due to police pressure and was not involved in Marta's murder. Miguel Carcano changed his testimony on March 18, claiming that he and El Cuco had violated Marta with a knife before strangling her. He then took Marta's body to Delgado's house and disposed of it in a garbage container. However, Marta's father accused Delgado's girlfriend, Maria Garcia, and theorized that Marta's body may have been destroyed, as Maria Garcia's father worked at a biological waste crematorium. Despite this theory gaining media attention, the police continued searching for Marta's body. On November 16, 2009, El Cuco was moved to a supervised apartment because he had exceeded the maximum time allowed for confinement. He was awaiting trial, which took place in February 2011. El Cuco was acquitted of abuse and murder charges due to insufficient evidence, but was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in a juvenile detention center for covering up for Miguel. The trial for the 4 defendants Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, Maria Garcia involved in the case began on October 17, 2011. During the trial, Miguel Carcano admitted to hitting Marta with an ashtray during a heated argument, which led to her death. He also revealed that his previous statements about abusing Marta were false. The investigation revealed inconsistencies in the stories told by Delgado, Maria Garcia, and Samuel. They claimed to have no knowledge of Marta's whereabouts after her death. They alleged that Miguel fabricated the entire story to reduce his guilt. However, forensic analysis uncovered incriminating evidence. On November 22, 2011, the forensic police discovered traces of Marta's blood on Miguel's jacket. A mix of Miguel DNA and Maria Garcia's DNA was also found on a roll of fabric tape. Additionally, a DNA match from Delgado and Maria Garcia was detected on an extension cable, believed to have been used to strangle Marta. This was surprising, given the accused had consistently maintained they had only been at the crime scene early in the morning and had no knowledge of the incident. When confronted with the new evidence, Maria Garcia was accused of violating Marta's body in attempting to cover up the crime. A detailed analysis of the crime scene revealed up to 5 fingerprints on 3 alcohol bottles, with 1 belonging to El Cuco. As the investigation drew to a close, the 4 suspects were under intense scrutiny from the public. Their trials were heavily guarded by the police, and the prosecution presented a substantial case against Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, and Maria Garcia. The trial involved 90 witnesses, including national police officers and experts. The prosecution also presented 30,000 pH monitorings, crime scene photographs, DNA evidence, and other items found at the house on Leon 13. The trial sparked a massive public outcry, drawing large crowds that pushed against the police barrier. The public requested to view Marta's body and also wanted to catch a glimpse of Miguel, the accused. Despite Delgado and Maria Garcia attempting to conceal themselves with hats and sunglasses, however, they were still unable to escape the crowd's attention. A woman approached them, shouting insults, while others tried to remove their sunglasses and pushed them forward, forcing them to reveal their faces to the surrounding crowd. During the trial, El Cuco's mother gave an interview with her face covered, insisting on her son's innocence and stating that neither she nor El Cuco had any knowledge about Marta's body. Despite being labeled a liar by journalists, she received €10,000 for the interview. A key witness then came forward, a taxi driver who had given Delgado a ride on the night of the crime. The driver explained that he had been extra cautious with his passengers, as a colleague had been murdered recently. He recalled picking up a bald, bearded man matching Delgado's description, who had a plastic bag and stared at him intently. The driver stated that he dropped Delgado off on Leon's 13th Street, exactly where the crime took place, and charged him €8 for the ride. However, Delgado's defense lawyer questioned the driver's statement, pointing out that the fare for the 2-kilometer ride should have been €5, not €8, which cast doubt on the driver's testimony. Marta's parents took the stand and described the immense pain they were experiencing due to the situation. They had to quit their jobs, start taking psychiatric medication, and even develop depression. Their other 2 daughters, Marta's sisters, were also going through a terrible time. The jury's verdict in January 2012 did not bring the family the satisfaction they were hoping for. Miguel was the only person responsible for Marta's murder and was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. Additionally, he was banned from living in the city where Marta's family resides for the next 30 years. He to pay part of the trial costs and compensate Marta's parents with €280,000 for the moral damage caused by her murder and disappearance. Each of her sisters was also awarded €30,000. In contrast, Delgado and Samuel were released due to lack of evidence placing them at the crime scene at the time of the murder. However, the following year, they demanded that Marta's family pay for the trial costs, adding to the family's distress. Marta's father expressed his intention to seek justice beyond Spain's borders, as he believed the country's system was outdated. He even considered taking Marta's case to Strasbourg, home to the European Parliament and the European Court of Human Rights. In December 2011, Marta's mother wrote a heartfelt letter to Miguel, who was in prison at the time. She asks him to return Marta's body so they can end the long suffering they have endured. She longed to give Marta a proper burial, where she could visit her, bring flowers, and talk to her. Unfortunately, the letter went unanswered. On January 24, 2012, 3 years after Marta's disappearance, demonstrations took place in various Spanish cities and towns, demanding justice for the young girl. As a result, Miguel faced threats from fellow inmates and attempted to take his own life. He was then transferred to a specialized therapy unit where he had limited contact with the outside world, including no visitors or phone calls. During his imprisonment, Miguel created multiple versions of the crime, with as many as 7 different accounts. This led to several lawyers withdrawing from his case due to inconsistencies. In his latest testimony, presented in 2013, he implicated someone close to him as the perpetrator of the crime. Miguel described an argument between him and his brother, Delgado, over the mortgage for their house at Leon 13. The dispute began when Miguel sent a letter to the family stating that he no longer wanted to cover for Delgado. Miguel stated that a disagreement over a fraudulent loan led to a physical confrontation. The situation became violent and Delgado allegedly threatened his younger brother with a weapon. When Marta intervened, she was fatally struck with the butt of Delgado's gun. After the incident, Delgado made a phone call, but the recipient and the content of the conversation are unknown. Delgado then left the house, leaving Marta's lifeless body behind. El Cuco arrived, and Delgado asked for his help in disposing of the body. They used a wheelchair to transport the body to the Mahala farm in Laneda, where they buried it. Marta. At first, Marta's parents believed Miguel's story and were grateful to him for telling the truth. They requested that the investigation be reopened, this time focusing on Delgado. However, the prosecution and the judge did not find Marta's statements credible. Marta's father visited Miguel in prison, asking for his cooperation in finding Marta's body. In exchange for Miguel's help, Marta's father offered him a deal. Upon his release from prison, he would give Miguel the house located at Lawn 13, which he had previously purchased. The search for Marta's body became one of the most expensive in the country's history, involving extensive land and sea searches. It seemed impossible for Miguel, Samuel, and another person to transport Marta's body on a motorcycle without incident. During the reenactment, the body fell off the moment the engine started. After Miguel claimed that the body was thrown into a trash bin, the search shifted to the local landfill, which receives all the area's waste. In order to find any relevant clues, the search team estimated that they would need to remove approximately 40,000 tons of waste from the landfill due to the large amount of time that had passed since Marta's disappearance and the massive amount of waste at the landfill. The search for Marta's body lasted 32 days but was unsuccessful. Miguel, the accused, gave investigators 4 different locations where evidence might be found, leading to multiple new searches. However, the searches were hindered by a lack of funds, and at one point, the then Interior Minister Alfredo Perez had to pause the search due to financial constraints. In April 2013, Miguel pointed to Delgado as the real murderer and provided another location where Marta's body could be found, this time near the city of Lake, Canada. Despite having lost credibility due to his previous false versions, a new search was conducted. Miguel went with the police to the area and gave them a general idea of where he claimed to have buried Marta's body in 2009, along with Delgado. The police excavated the soil of 6 farms, focusing on areas with recent earth movements. A total area of 10,000 square meters was scanned, but unfortunately, nothing was found. All the searches were unsuccessful, and at the request of Marta's parents. The search was halted until 2015. The public ministry requested that the defendants compensate the Ministry of the Interior for the costs incurred during the search, amounting to $66,329. In a new development, an individual named Oscar, who claimed to be a criminal, approached El Cuco's, Rosalia mother, and pretended to seek a confession. However, his actual intention was to infiltrate and secretly gather information. Over time, Oscar and Rosalia developed a close relationship, meeting every 2 or 3 days and speaking daily on the phone. Rosalia trusted Oscar enough to give him the keys to her house, and they shared secrets and took long walks on the beach together. He gained her trust and affection. Oscar even convinced Rosalia that they would leave the country together once her son's, El Cuco situation was resolved. Meanwhile, Oscar secretly recorded 600 hours of conversations between Rosalia and those around her over a period of 2.5 years. In October 2011, El Cuco was granted temporary release from the juvenile center, where he was being held for covering up for Miguel. During one conversation, Oscar asked El Cuco if he thought the police were following him. El Cuco replied that were, and that the police were trying to find out where they had hidden Marta. This statement incriminated El Cuco and revealed his involvement in Marta's disappearance. Realizing his mistake, El Cuco quickly tried to retract his statement, claiming he had done nothing wrong. Oscar played along as if he hadn't noticed. However, in other recordings, El Cuco made fun of the police's efforts to find the body, and Rosalia criticized the investigators for not examining her phone records closely. Although Oscar worked diligently to record conversations, the 600 hours of recorded material was not presented as evidence in court. It wasn't until 13 years after Marta's disappearance, in 2022, that the recordings led to results. On May 26, 2022, a large crowd of mostly neighbors from Marta's family gathered outside the courthouse to demonstrate their support for a new trial. Rosalia and El Cuco arrived at the courthouse, protected by police. El Cuco was fully covered, wearing a hoodie, sunglasses, gloves, and a mask. Rosalia wore sunglasses, a mask, and a headscarf. In 2011, El Cuco claimed he wasn't at the scene of the crime on Lyon 13th Street. El Cuco said he had gone home around 11:30 p.m. with friends and met his mother's partner, Oscar, who was taking out the trash. Oscar then went upstairs to his apartment and stayed there for the rest of the night. Rosalia claimed she had gone out for drinks with Oscar around 11:30 p.m. and returned home around 1:30 a.m. on January 25th, finding her son asleep. El Cuco admitted that on January 24th, Miguel contacted him for assistance after killing Marta. Miguel requested his help in burying Marta's body, along with Samuel. They used Rosalia's vehicle to travel to Lyon 13, where Delgado is also there. During this time, Rosalia, El Cuco's mother, stayed at a bar until 4:30 in the morning. Upon returning home, she found her son missing. In the end, El Cuco and Rosalia were charged with perjury for hindering prosecution. As a result, El Cuco and Rosalia were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison on June 9, 2022. The judge also imposed a fine of €1,144 on each of them, as well as ordering them to pay €30,000 in civil liability to Marta's parents. Despite the sentencing and fines, Marta's parents were more concerned with finding their daughter's body than seeking monetary compensation. In the same year, the investigative judge allowed an expert to access the mobile phones of Miguel and Marta. Notably, Miguel gave his consent for his phone to be examined, believing it would reveal evidence pointing to Delgado as the actual perpetrator. The primary objective of the investigation was to locate Marta's body, which remained missing. 13 years after Marta's murder, the civil court decided to close the investigation into the search for her body in November 2022. The court declared the investigation period had expired because no new significant evidence had been found. Marta's parents eventually accepted that Miguel would never disclose the location of their daughter's body. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ryan Poston. Ryan Poston was born on December 30, 1982, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, to Lisa and Jay Poston. He had a strong and loving bond with his three sisters, Allison, Catherine, and Elizabeth, throughout his life. Growing up, Ryan had the opportunity to travel extensively and attend schools in Switzerland and the Philippines. This exposure broadened his horizons and gave him an adventurous spirit. Ryan was also known for his striking good looks, which, coupled with his charismatic personality, made him stand out in a crowd. After graduating from high school, Ryan attended Indiana University, where he earned a degree in political science, history, and geography. He excelled academically and graduated with honors in 2005. Following in the footsteps of his family members, Ryan pursued a career in law. He enrolled in the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University. Driven by his admiration for the legal profession, his esteemed grandfather and uncle, both practicing attorneys, were his role models. Ryan's ultimate goal was to own a successful law firm. While in Cincinnati, Ohio, Ryan dedicated himself to helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. Despite being young, he had already built a strong reputation, and many sought his advice. He worked hard to ensure everyone had access to fair and competent legal representation, regardless of their financial situation. After a painful breakup in 2011, Ryan turned to his cousin Carissa for comfort and support. During a visit to Lexington, Kentucky to spend time with her, he met Shayna Hubers, a Lexington native, and his life took an unexpected turn. Shayna Hubers embodied the quintessential Southern girl, renowned for her outgoing personality and effortless ability to form friendships. Her warm and charming demeanor naturally drew people to her. After graduating high school in 2009 with a full scholarship, she continued her education at the University of Kentucky, majoring in psychology, before pursuing her master's degree in psychology at Eastern Kentucky University. Despite their 8-year age gap, Ryan was 29, while Shayna was just 21. Their feelings for each other grew increasingly undeniable. With each visit Ryan made to see his cousin Carissa in Lexington, he found himself devoting more time to Shayna. As they spent more time together, their bond deepened. Shayna began spending more time in Highland Heights, the Kentucky suburb where Ryan lived. Every weekend, she would pack a bag and visit Ryan's home, dedicating herself to taking care of him, cooking his meals, and cleaning his living space. As time went on, Ryan and Shayna's relationship grew stronger, and he took her to meet his parents. She was over the moon with excitement, telling her friends all about Ryan and even saying she wanted to become Mrs. Ryan Poston. But their promising future came to a tragic end on October 12, 2012. In a panicked call to the police, Shayna admitted to fatally shooting her boyfriend, Ryan. The details she shared revealed a devastating scene of domestic violence that had spun out of control. According to Shayna, Ryan had tried to physically abuse her, dragging her out of the house when she attempted to gather her belongings. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan had confronted her with a gun, leading to a physical fight. In the heat of the moment, Shayna managed to grab the gun, but she was intimidated by Ryan's size. In a state of panic, she pulled the trigger, ultimately shooting Ryan. Shayna admitted that she believed Ryan's death was inevitable, so she claimed she wanted to end his suffering. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan was in distress, making unusual sounds, which motivated her to shoot him several more times. Afterwards, she revealed that she left the gun on a bookshelf. Minutes after Shayna called 911 to report that she had shot her boyfriend, officers were sent to the scene. When they arrived, they told Shayna to come out of the apartment with her hands up. At first, she was hesitant, but she eventually followed their orders. As she walked out, they told her to lie face down on the ground. It was clear that Shayna was very upset as she complied with their instructions. After the officers handcuffed Shayna and put her in the back of their patrol car, they entered the apartment and found Ryan Poston's body on the dining room floor, covered in blood. Crime scene investigators arrived and examined Ryan's condo, which looked a bit messy, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 29-year-old man. They found that Ryan had a concealed carry permit and owned weapons, including the Sig Sauer semi-automatic gun that Shayna used to shoot him. Based on the evidence they gathered, the investigators concluded that Ryan was sitting at the table when Shayna opened fire. They knew this because of the blood found on the table. However, the fact that several items on the dining room table were not disturbed raised doubts about Shayna's story. If there had been a fight, the items would have been disturbed. The crime scene investigators thoroughly searched Ryan's apartment, gathering every detail. At the same time, police officers questioned Ryan's neighbors to see if they had any information that could help the case. One of Ryan's neighbors, a woman named Nikki, spoke to the detective and provided some useful insights. Nikki knew Shayna well and thought that Shayna was more committed to Ryan than he was to her. According to Nikki, the couple often had loud, angry arguments that disturbed the neighborhood. Nikki remembered a specific incident several months ago when Shayna came to her door in tears, saying she was afraid of Ryan. Shayna had told Nikki that she and Ryan had a violent fight, during which he lifted her up and threw her down the hallway, causing her injuries. Nikki believed Shayna and encouraged her to report the abuse to the police, but Shayna decided not to take legal action. At the police station, detectives took Shayna to an interrogation room to question her about the shooting of her boyfriend, Ryan. Before starting the interview, the officers read Shayna her Miranda rights, reminding her that she had the right to have an attorney present. Shayna chose to exercise this right and asked for a lawyer to be present. While waiting in the interrogation room, Shayna filled out some paperwork under the supervision of a detective. Despite having asked for a lawyer, Shayna still chatted with the detective. When asked who the victim was, Shayna calmly replied that it was the man she had killed. This response showed a clear lack of emotion, as it was obvious she knew the victim was Ryan, her long-term boyfriend. Shayna remained in the interrogation room with the detectives, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. She recounted the events of the previous night, describing how Ryan had allegedly grabbed her by the throat and violently thrown her around the apartment. At some point during the investigation, the detective temporarily left the room, replaced by another officer. Shayna began to reveal more details about her encounter with Ryan to this new officer. She alleged that Ryan had been extremely aggressive prior to the shooting, hurling insults at her, calling her crazy, and taunting her while brandishing a gun. Shayna believed that Ryan's behavior that night was fueled by drug use, which contributed to his violent outbursts. Throughout the interview, Shayna consistently stuck to her version of the events that culminated in the shooting. She claimed that Ryan was sitting at the dining room table, handling ammunition for his Sig Sauer pistol, when she noticed him staring aggressively at her from across the table. At that moment, she became aware of his intentions and realized he was trying to evict her from his condo. Shayna confessed to picking up the gun and firing it in the midst of the chaos, hitting Ryan with a single bullet. Shayna continued to describe the incident, claiming that after shooting Ryan once, she saw him twitching. Believing it was necessary to end his suffering, she fired multiple shots, ultimately killing him. In her confession, Shayna told the detective that Ryan was vain and had mentioned wanting a nose job, so she decided to grant him his wish. She deliberately aimed her gun at his face and pulled the trigger, essentially giving him the rhinoplasty he had requested. During the intense interrogation, Shayna expressed deep concerns about the impact of the incident on her academic performance and her future romantic relationships. She confided in the detective that having a dead boyfriend would make it difficult for her to find someone to marry, especially if they discovered she had killed him in self-defense. Despite her statement, the detective arrested and charged her with Ryan's murder. Shayna seemed genuinely surprised by her arrest, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. In 2015, Shayna's trial began, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecutor compared Shayna to Jodi Arias, who had also been charged with murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander, emphasizing the striking similarities between the two cases. This heightened the tension in the courtroom as everyone awaited the outcome. The prosecutor argued that Shayna was fixated on her ex-boyfriend, Ryan. According to the prosecution, Ryan dominated Shayna's thoughts, and she constantly discussed him. During the trial, the prosecutor presented testimony from Ryan's friends, who described his plans to end the relationship with Shayna and his efforts to avoid her phone calls and messages. Despite this, Shayna continued to visit Ryan's condo in Highland Heights uninvited, including on the night of the murder. The prosecution introduced evidence that Ryan had scheduled a date with Audrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio, on the night of the murder. This information supported the prosecution's theory that Shayna was driven by jealousy and anger towards Ryan's potential new love interest. Audrey Bolt testified that she was supposed to meet Ryan for drinks at a bar on the night of the murder, but he failed to appear. It wasn't until later that she learned of his murder. The prosecution also presented evidence that Ryan had repeatedly expressed his desire to end the relationship with Shayna in the days leading up to his death. Ryan had sought advice from his father, Jay, on how to handle the situation, and Jay had counseled him to be kind to Shayna to avoid a messy breakup. However, it appears that Shayna continued to exert control over Ryan on the day he was killed. The prosecution presented evidence of several text exchanges between Ryan and Shayna, in which Ryan clearly told her he did not want to see her that weekend because he had other commitments. Nevertheless, Shayna showed up uninvited at his condo, which was not unusual for her. The argument that ensued reached a boiling point when Ryan explicitly told Shayna their relationship was over and she could no longer control him. Prosecutors argued that this statement enraged Shayna, prompting her to pick up a gun and fatally shoot Ryan. During Shayna's trial for murdering Ryan, the prosecution showed a video of her being questioned by the police to suggest she was a cold-blooded killer. In the video, Shayna's calm behavior and responses seemed to back up the idea that she had intentionally taken Ryan's life. The footage showed her dancing and singing along to music, which seemed unusual for someone who had just killed their loved one in self-defense. Normally, people in such a situation would be distraught and crying due to the loss of life and the weight of their actions. The prosecution's goal in showing the video was to make Shayna appear detached and unemotional, implying that her actions were not those of someone who had acted in self-defense. They claimed that her lack of tears and carefree behavior proved her guilt. However, this interpretation was open to debate and up to the jury to decide. In the end, the video was a key piece of evidence in the prosecution's case against Shayna, but it was just one part of the evidence presented during the trial. Shayna's defense team stuck to a clear storyline throughout her trial, arguing that Ryan was the aggressive and violent one on the night of the incident, leading Shayna to shoot him. To back up this claim, they built a picture of Ryan's mental state, suggesting that a mix of drugs he was taking, including anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines, contributed significantly to his behavior. The defense team presented the jury with autopsy results showing the presence of these drugs in Ryan's system, strengthening their argument that the drugs influenced his actions. An expert toxicologist testified for Shayna, stating that a combination of drugs like anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines could cause someone to become violent and paranoid. This testimony aimed to provide a reasonable explanation for Shayna's actions, implying that she may not have intended to harm Ryan. During Shayna's trial in April 2015, the prosecution grew increasingly worried that she might be acquitted due to being a smart, young, and attractive woman, and that her self-defense claim might persuade the jury. However, on April 23rd, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Shayna of murdering her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. At the August 2015 sentencing hearing, Shayna persisted in shifting the blame for Ryan's death onto him, which infuriated his friends and family. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial, Shayna stuck to her claim of innocence and refused to acknowledge her role in the events. Under Kentucky law, a defendant who is deemed a victim of domestic violence can be eligible for early parole after serving just 20% of their sentence. However, the judge in this case ruled that Shayna did not meet the criteria, characterizing her crime as a premeditated murder. As a result, the judge handed down a 40-year prison sentence, making Shayna eligible for parole in 17 years, when she will be 41 years old in 2032. Shayna Hubers was sentenced, but she appealed for a new trial, which was granted by a judge in August 2016. The reason for the appeal was that one of the jurors had failed to disclose their felony conviction, which is against Kentucky law since felons are not allowed to serve on juries. Following a 4-month delay, Shayna's second trial for the murder of Ryan Poston began in August 2018. During the opening arguments, Shayna's defense attorney claimed that throughout her year-and-a-half-long relationship with Ryan, Shayna tried her best to make him happy. However, their romance suffered because of it. The attorney stated that on the very first night Shayna and Ryan met, he was violent toward her, both physically and sexually. This incident had a lasting effect on her, and it took her several weeks to respond to his messages after that. Shayna's defense lawyers claimed that her high school experience of sexual assault led to a history of alcohol abuse and promiscuity. They argued that this traumatic event contributed to her behavior on the night of the murder. The defense team aimed to create a sympathetic image of Shayna, highlighting her troubled past and arguing that she was not responsible for her actions on the night of the murder. They sought to challenge the prosecution's narrative, suggesting that her behavior was the result of a combination of factors, including a history of abuse and a toxic relationship with Ryan. The defense portrayed Shayna as a victim of domestic violence at Ryan's hands, rather than as a cold-blooded murderer. They claimed that her actions were driven not by a desire for revenge or financial gain, but by years of abuse by her former partner. According to the defense, Ryan constantly criticized Shayna about her weight and chest size, pressuring her to enlarge her breasts. This constant pressure contributed to her low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy, the defense argued. The defense claimed that Ryan and Shayna's sexual relationship was troubled, marked by frequent disagreements and frustration from both parties. According to the defense, Ryan yearned for a more romantic and intimate connection, but this desire was not fulfilled, leading to a growing rift between them. To support this claim, the defense presented evidence that Shayna had sought an injection to improve her romantic life, which was meant to address the couple's sexual difficulties and strengthen their bond. However, the defense argued that Ryan's consistent rejection and disinterest worsened the strain on their relationship, causing Shayna to become increasingly frustrated and isolated. Moreover, the defense alleged that Ryan often broke up with Shayna, only to engage in conversations with other women. In contrast, the prosecution stated that while Ryan Poston was not a perfect boyfriend, he was not abusive. They argued that Shayna did not act in self-defense when she fatally shot Ryan, but rather because he had ended their relationship that night. The prosecution claimed that it was time for Ryan to break up with Shayna, as she refused to leave him alone despite the breakup, demonstrating her inability to move on from the relationship. One of Ryan's co-workers testified that the breakup between Ryan and Shayna would be permanent this time because Ryan had always avoided breaking up with Shayna in person. According to the co-worker, Shayna had made every effort to keep Ryan. The prosecution presented text messages in which Shayna told her friends that she and Ryan's romantic encounters had brought them closer together. However, Shayna testified that these encounters had actually driven them apart. In another text message exchange, Shayna asked Ryan for sex, but Ryan was taking antidepressants, which had reduced his sex drive due to the medication's side effects. However, when Shayna testified, she claimed that Ryan had forced her into sexual intercourse. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shayna guilty of murdering Ryan despite contradictory testimonies and conflicting evidence. During the sentencing hearing, Shayna's mother emotionally addressed the judge, sharing stories of her daughter's singing talent, which had earned her multiple college scholarships. Through tears, she begged the jury to consider granting Shayna parole, arguing that her daughter still had the potential to positively impact people's lives. The mother acknowledged, however, that her pleas did not minimize the grief and pain experienced by Ryan Poston's family. Shayna was given a life sentence with no chance of parole. As part of her sentence, she must serve at least 17 years before becoming eligible for parole in 2032. She is currently serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in 1994 in England to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her parents had another child, a younger sister named Hannah. From a very early age, the sisters developed a strong bond and grew up in a loving and caring family environment. When Emily turned 9 and Hannah was 7, the entire family relocated to New Zealand, making Auckland their new home. However, after moving to New Zealand, Emily began associating with an undesirable group of people. Concerned about her influence, her middle-class parents made the decision to send her back to the UK, in 2010 to live with her grandparents and start anew. Emily moved to England to pursue her studies at Brockenhurst College, where she aimed to earn a business degree and harbored ambitions of becoming a model. During her time in England, she resided at her grandparents' house in Bournemouth, a popular seaside resort town located in the county of Dorset on the English Channel coast. While in England, Emily met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, who made a strong impression on her. Their communication gradually developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily returned to New Zealand to visit her family, whom she hadn't seen for about 6 months. Her father picked her up from the airport, and Emily greeted him enthusiastically, giving him a tight hug and telling him how much she'd missed him. Emily was extremely close to her father, who adored her and missed her cheerful smile, infectious laughter, and playful dirty jokes. The next day, the whole family visited Emily's favorite pizzeria. She filled her parents in on her college life, mentioning her modeling career and the wonderful friends she'd made. She also talked about her boyfriend, Elliot Turner, and casually mentioned that she was considering ending their relationship when she got back to England, as she felt too young for something serious at that point. Emily spent the next few weeks socializing with friends and family, having a wonderful time without arousing any suspicion that she would be leaving soon. When the time came for her flight to board, she found it difficult to bid farewell to her family. However, she made a promise to return in 5 months to watch the Rugby World Cup matches, which were scheduled to begin on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her father, Emily mentioned that she had broken up with Elliot, but she didn't elaborate on the details. The reason behind the breakup was that Elliot had seen the photos Emily had posted on social media while she was in New Zealand, which showed her with other guys, and he became extremely jealous. Elliot Turner, son of a wealthy jeweler, was living a seemingly carefree life at 20 years old. He was a familiar face in Bournemouth's local bar and club scene, where he was part of a group of affluent young men known as the Firm. His friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner, due to his boasts. In December 2010, he met Emily, and the couple indulged in the resort's high life, often staying out late into the night. However, Turner's history of obsessing over women soon resurfaced, and his jealousy sparked violent arguments in the relationship. Those who knew him described Turner as having a threatening, aggressive, violent, controlling, and possessive nature. In January 2008, 16-year-old Elliot Turner received a police harassment warning for relentlessly sending text messages and emails to his ex-girlfriend after she ended their relationship. With a sense of entitlement and no need to work thanks to his parents' financial support, Turner thrived on being the center of attention. He was skilled at manipulating people, including his parents, and his life revolved around parties, women, alcohol, and illegal substances. Turner had an inflated sense of self-importance, often carrying a hammer as a symbol of power and control. His friends believed he fancied himself a gangster, seeking to become the go-to person for help and admiration. He would often buy drinks for everyone at the bar, though his flashy new Mini Cooper was actually a gift from his grandmother. Turner struggled to maintain his tough guy image, frequently posting boastful, street-smart messages on social media, where he referred to himself as Scarface or God. He had no shortage of female admirers, but when he met Emily, he formed a strong attachment to her. She reinforced the image of himself as a successful person, an image he had worked hard to cultivate. As their relationship progressed, Turner began to exhibit controlling behavior more frequently. He even made a disturbing threat, telling Emily he would take her life in an emotional outburst. In a note to him a few months before her death, Emily wrote a list of 4 requests. Firstly, her love for him. Secondly, a plea to stop making threats on her life. Thirdly, a request to refrain from discussing his ex-girlfriends. And lastly, a desire for him to tone down his aggressive behavior, be cooler and less intimidating, as it was causing her fear. When Emily realized that Turner's controlling behavior had become unbearable, she knew she had to end the relationship. People like Turner, however, rarely accept rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily went to a nightclub with her friends, unaware that Turner had been monitoring her Facebook messages. He discovered that she was seeing someone else, which enraged him. Turner stormed into the club and confronted Emily, sparking an argument. The situation escalated when Emily threw her drink in his face. Turner responded by harassing her verbally and making violent threats. He also criticized her outfit, claiming it was too provocative. Despite Emily's attempts to break free, Turner refused to accept that their relationship was over. Elliot ruined her evening, so she decided to leave, yet her ex-boyfriend followed her. His friends heard him say, "I will kill her. I will go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I would do 10 years, it wouldn't bother me." Turner caught up with Emily, somehow persuading her to go to his house. He said he wanted to talk in a more relaxed atmosphere. Elliot Turner lived with his parents, perhaps that's why Emily went with him. Maybe she thought he would behave more calmly in the presence of his parents. Neighbors saw them go inside the house. Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called the emergency service the next morning, saying Emily wouldn't wake up. At around 9 a.m., Anita received instructions from the operator on how to assist Emily while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. However, when the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics were only able to pronounce Emily Longley dead. Anita, an Indonesian citizen, had moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner, and the couple had a son together. In hindsight, they had spoiled their son, which proved to be a mistake. During Anita's conversation with the emergency services operator, her voice lacked the emotional distress expected of a mother who had just discovered her son's girlfriend's lifeless body. Instead, she sounded eerily calm, as if the situation was normal. In New Zealand, thousands of miles from England, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 a.m. to find multiple missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and younger daughter Hannah. A voicemail from Hannah was also waiting, but Mark struggled to decipher what she was saying. Then he heard Caroline's scream in the background, followed by the devastating words, "Emily is dead." Mark refused to accept it. He immediately called his mother in England, and when she answered, her uncontrollable crying shattered his world. Moments later, a police officer took the phone and delivered the tragic news. "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily has passed away." Still in denial, Mark couldn't process the news, remembering how Emily had been sitting on his couch with a smile just a week prior. Flying to the UK, the grief-stricken father struggled to come to terms with the devastating news that his daughter was dead. But the harsh reality was that it wasn't just a terrible dream. The loss of their eldest daughter was a profoundly distressing experience for Emily's parents. The police informed them that Emily had passed away peacefully in her sleep, a revelation that was utterly incomprehensible. She was, after all, young and healthy. The police gathered some evidence, but the circumstances surrounding Emily's death remained shrouded in mystery. They had to patiently wait for the autopsy results to shed some light on the tragedy. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, claimed to investigators that they had spent the entire night at home and hadn't heard a sound. However, Elliot's actions raised suspicions. He openly grieved Emily's loss by posting photos of the two of them together on his Facebook page. Since the police lacked concrete evidence to disprove Elliot's and his parents' story, they were unable to contest the claim that Emily had died mysteriously in her sleep. During the investigation of any death, determining the cause of death is the primary concern. Once investigators establish the cause of death, they understand the nature of the case and how to proceed with the investigation. Prior to receiving the autopsy results, investigators discovered a disturbing Facebook post made by Emily a few days before her death. On Thursday, May 5th, Emily wrote, "I have a stalker. I recently received a strange phone call where the caller claimed to know everything about me. When I asked how they obtained my number, they replied, 'I'll tell you when I see you.' They continued to ask me out and wouldn't stop calling. I eventually hung up on them. At the same time, investigators discovered that Emily had a public argument with Elliot Turner at a nightclub, witnessed by other patrons, before her death. Further inquiry revealed that Turner's friends knew he was possessive and controlling, constantly monitoring Emily's actions. They were aware that Turner had discovered Emily's secret meeting with another man and had repeatedly threatened to kill her. However, his friends downplayed these threats, thinking they were just a ploy to boost Turner's street credibility. The autopsy results did not provide a definitive cause of Emily's death, although experts suggested strangulation as a possible explanation, citing physical findings consistent with neck compression. Investigators suspected that one of the Turner family members might be involved in her death, leading them to install listening devices in the Turner household. Their goal was to uncover any potential secrets or miscommunications within the family. As it turned out, their suspicions were well-founded. Elliot Turner coached his mother on how to respond to police questioning, dictating what she should say. His father, Lee Turner, initially seemed to recognize the impropriety of his son's actions, but eventually surrendered to the will of his son and wife. During the trial, Elliot Turner confessed to causing Emily's death, claiming he acted in self-defense after a violent confrontation in his bedroom. He alleged that, during the altercation, he was forced to grab Emily by the neck, but denied strangling her. According to his account, he discovered her lifeless body in his bed the following morning. Elliot Turner confessed to threatening Emily and feeling upset and deceived on the evening preceding her death. According to him, Emily initiated a physical altercation, and in response he grabbed her by the neck to restrain her. He stated that he held her in this position for approximately 5 to 6 seconds before releasing her. Emily's father, Mark, reflected on the difficulty of losing his daughter. He explained that coping with death is never easy, and every anniversary is a painful reminder, especially birthdays, Christmas, and Easter, which were the last times he truly spent quality time with her. Mark painfully admitted that the hardest aspect for him was that he would never get to see the woman Emily could have become. He missed witnessing the life she was deprived of and the woman she was growing into, which he was extremely proud of. As her father, Mark acknowledged his bias, but genuinely believed that the world was a better place with Emily in it, and certainly more enjoyable. During the trial, Elliot Turner was depicted as a spoiled, affluent youngster whose parents attempted to help him evade punishment. The court learned that Elliot was given complete freedom in his family's luxurious home, where he would host wild parties for his friends from middle-class backgrounds. His father, Lee, described Elliot as unruly, and to minimize disturbances, gave him his own living space in the converted garage, allowing him to come and go as he pleased. It was in this room, equipped with a minibar, that Elliot strangled Emily to death on his bed. The police discovered search queries on his seized computers regarding death by strangulation and methods to avoid punishment for a crime. The primary motive was revealed to be jealousy, as the court heard testimony that Elliot discovered Emily had spent the night with another man while he was in custody. Elliot boasted that the jury would believe his twisted story that Emily had attacked him, and he acted in self-defense when he strangled her in a fit of jealousy. In letters from prison, he planned to sell the rights to his story, drive a new Range Rover, and move to Spain to live a fashionable life. However, the jury quickly shattered his illusions, finding him guilty. On May 22, 2012, the court sentenced Elliot Turner to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. The judge described him as a man of striking arrogance, stating that Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl whose light had been suddenly and needlessly extinguished by Elliot, who did not truly love her but saw her as a trophy to control. Elliot's parents, Anita and Lee Turner, were also on trial. They tried to cover up their son's crime, with Lee destroying Elliot's confession letter and Anita postponing the ambulance call to allow their son to cover his tracks. When asked why she did not call an ambulance, Anita Turner replied that she did not believe Emily was dead. Both Anita and Lee were found guilty of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 27 months in prison. The judge said they chose to fight the case, showing little remorse, and the anguished tone of Lee's voice on the recorded tape revealed their guilt. After serving their sentence, they still live in the house where Emily Longley died. Emily's dad, Mark, broke down as he spoke about the verdicts, supported by his former wife Caroline and daughter Hannah. He said the revelations over the past 5 weeks have shocked and disgusted them, and that a man as evil as Turner could treat a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently is beyond belief. They are proud that Emily had come halfway around the world to build a better life for herself, which Turner decided to end. Mark said there was a lot of talk about Turner's boasting, and that no one had taken his threat seriously until it was too late. He added that even Turner's mother did not take it seriously when he texted her to say he was going to break Emily's neck. Perhaps if someone had taken his threat seriously, Emily might be with them today. Mark hopes Turner suffers every day in prison for what he has done. In October 2020, it was reported that Elliot Turner was attacked by his cellmates in prison. This occurred after he displayed photos of Emily in his cell and bragged about receiving letters from female admirers. His boasting about his anticipated return to a luxurious lifestyle, complete with champagne, Bentley cars, and numerous women, angered his cellmates and prompted the attack. Despite this, Turner will be eligible to apply for early release from prison, and it is hoped that the parole board will exercise sound judgment and make a prudent decision regarding an individual who still shows no remorse for his actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ronell Burns. On November 6, 2021, around 9 p.m., a concerned neighbor called emergency services to report hearing frantic screams and multiple gunshots coming from a nearby house. Responding police officers rushed to the scene and entered the home, where they discovered the lifeless bodies of a man and a woman lying on the floor. Following a thorough examination of the crime scene, the police launched an investigation into the tragic incident. The victims were identified as Ronell and Kiana Burns, a married couple. The question on everyone's mind was, who would commit such a heinous crime and what could be the motive? The Burns family resided in a spacious house in Gwinnett County, an area known for its remarkable ethnic diversity. Although the house did not appear to have been burgled, with all belongings still in their original places, the police were able to uncover a crucial lead in the double murder case relatively quickly. Let's go back in time and uncover the true roots of the tragedy that befell the Burns family. We begin with Kiana, born on September 15, 1977, in St. Louis, Missouri. After graduating from Riverview Garden High School, she attended St. Louis Community College in Florissant Valley, where she studied cosmetology and eventually started building her career. Kiana's hard work and perseverance paid off, and she opened her own successful beauty salon, which became popular. She was driven by her dream of living a luxurious and wealthy life, and her dedication paid off over the next 20 years. With time, she transformed her salon into one of the largest in the St. Louis area. However, Kiana's personal life was not without its challenges. As a strong, wealthy, and ambitious woman, she found it difficult to find a worthy partner. By the time she was 44, she had 3 children from previous relationships, whom she loved deeply. Her family described her as a great and loving mother, a supportive friend, and a successful businesswoman. Kiana seemed to have it all when she met her future husband, Ronell Burns. Ronell Burns was born in St. Louis, Missouri, on May 14, 1975. After graduating from the High School of Fashion in 1994, he played on the basketball team and even competed for a state championship. With a driven and ambitious personality, Ronell thrived on competition and always aimed for greatness. Before meeting Kiana, Ronell had 2 children from a previous relationship. When they got together, they formed a strong and happy family. bringing together two successful and ambitious individuals. On September 13, 2012, Ronel and Kiana officially tied the knot in a beautiful wedding ceremony attended by numerous relatives and friends. However, after the wedding, Kiana began to notice new aspects of Ronel's personality. It turned out that Ronel had dedicated his life to Jesus Christ at a young age and wanted to spread the Lord's word. He started serving everyone he could, even strangers he met on the street. Ronel created a website where he coached and preached, claiming that God spoke to him in his early years, instructing him to help people, and that he had the power to make things happen in life. Ronel continued to minister, and his video messages became extremely popular on the internet. Apart from being a church coach, he was also a financial counselor and insurance agent. He founded a company called Traditional Financial Solutions, with the goal of helping people worldwide achieve financial independence. Ronel achieved significant success in his business and efforts to help others, and his speeches drew large crowds. Kiana supported her husband, and together they gained online popularity as Ronel was already well known as a leader and coach in the Six-Figure Ambition online program for entrepreneurs. He had a substantial online presence with over 7,000 followers on Instagram and 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, where he ran an educational video channel. Ronel and Kiana Burns merged their families and business expertise, and together they created something remarkable that touched thousands of people's lives. Kiana was a sought-after speaker at business events, where she shared valuable lessons and inspiration on how to succeed. She also had a large following on Instagram, with 14,000 followers, where she shared insights into her family life and inspirational quotes. In a popular video message, a stylish and well-branded couple shared their insights on entrepreneurship, highlighting how it had positively impacted their lives and those of thousands of their subscribers. They reiterated their mission to empower their audience with the skills to achieve success as entrepreneurs and build their own businesses, rather than being employed by others. The Burns family aimed to educate young entrepreneurs on how to invest their earnings wisely, generating passive income. They conveyed their belief in the potential of their students, emphasizing that you don't need to be exceptional to begin, but rather start taking action to achieve greatness. Despite showcasing their luxurious lifestyle to appeal to new students and subscribers, it was Kiana who had actually walked the path Ronel frequently described. She had built and operated a successful network of salons through hard work, contributing significantly to the family's wealth. Ronel, on the other hand, wanted to project an image of success, often posing in expensive attire. The family regularly posted photos from high-end restaurants, but in reality, successful individuals rarely have the time to engage in lengthy conversations, whereas those struggling financially were often drawn to the Burns' den, promises of easy wealth without effort, relying on Ronel's guidance. Ronel Burns established a company called Six-Figure Ambitions, allowing him to build his wealth and create a lasting legacy, which he frequently discussed in interviews. Ronel and his wife Kiana had built a close-knit family and were seen as inspirational role models by those around them. At the time, they had 3 children together, Rhea, McKay, and Ray. However, Ronel's ambition led him to suggest that Kiana leave her hometown of St. Louis and move to Atlanta. The real reason for the move was to expand their business, as Ronel had taken over his wife's business and wanted to establish a chain of beauty salons in Atlanta. Owning 3 salons in St. Louis was no longer enough for him. Although Kiana was hesitant to leave St. Louis, she eventually agreed to the move. Despite her reservations, she continued to present a united front with her husband in public. On social media, Kiana portrayed her life as perfect, sharing photos of luxurious gifts from her husband, such as a Maserati Levante, and her extensive collection of Louis Vuitton bags. Each post was accompanied by captions expressing admiration and gratitude towards her husband. Kiana, a popular blogger, had built a loyal following on Instagram, where she frequently shared heartwarming moments with her children and family. However, in a surprising turn of events, she revealed to her audience that their seemingly perfect family life was not as idyllic as it appeared. In reality, she and her husband were on the brink of divorce, a situation that had developed after their move to Atlanta. In a candid video message, Kiana confessed to her subscribers that she was struggling to adjust to her new life in a big, unfamiliar city. She opened up about the difficulties of leaving her old life behind and starting anew, and how she relied on the support of her followers during this challenging period. Although Kiana's Instagram feed presented a picture of happiness and unity, behind the scenes, her family was going through a tough time. Her loyal subscribers were a source of comfort during the dark days, which had become increasingly frequent. When Kiana finally broke the news of her impending divorce, her followers were shocked. Her husband, Rael, subsequently went live on air to corroborate the news, revealing that they had made the decision to divorce 7 months prior. In a detached tone, Rael explained that they would continue to run their joint business venture, despite their decision to go their separate ways. Bloggers usually only share their positive experiences with their followers because they fear that revealing their failures and struggles will cause them to lose credibility and admiration. However, the case of the Burns family serves as a prime example of how social media can create a false impression of a wealthy lifestyle. Rael had quickly spent all the money Kiana earned from her beauty salons, and as a result, the family's debt to various banks exceeded $500,000 within just a few years. Just before the tragic event, the family's financial struggles had reached a crisis point, exacerbated by their recent move to an unfamiliar city. Kiana went live on social media, asking her fans to pray for her strength as she struggled to cope without the support of family and friends, especially while taking care of her children. In the live stream, she spoke about the recent changes in her life and how she and her husband had moved to Atlanta just 5 or 6 months prior to expand their business. Kiana emphasized the importance of prayer and having a supportive network of loved ones to help during difficult times. Kiana kept secret the true reason for the division in the family: Rael's repeated cheating and promiscuity, which was never visible in their public Instagram life. That same night, Kiana posted a cheerful video of herself dancing at home with one of her daughters. However, a tragic event occurred a few hours later. Kiana and Rael got into a heated argument, and in the aftermath, Rael was shot, and Kiana was found dead in another room with a gun in her hand, suggesting she was the one who made the decision. Some people believed Kiana was driven to kill her husband after discovering his infidelity, while others thought the couple was heavily in debt and that Rael was a con man who had cheated her financially. Investigations revealed that Rael was a serial cheater in his previous marriage, wasting his wife's money and leading to financial ruin. When Rael met Kiana, a successful career woman, their combined fortune and experience seemed promising. However, their business ventures eventually failed, leaving only Kiana's beauty salon operational. Despite Rael's lack of income, he continued to present himself as a successful businessman on social media, hiding their true financial struggles and relationship problems. Behind their pious Christian facade, Rael and Kiana lived a life of luxury, frequently quoting the Bible and flaunting their wealth on social media. However, this was all an act. In reality, Rael worked for an insurance company that preyed on middle and lower-income families, and he even attempted to recruit his own family and friends into the scam. Their lavish spending eventually led to bankruptcy, forcing them to sell off some of their assets to pay their debts. Despite this, the couple continued to project an image of happiness and success, even considering a move to a bigger city to further their fraudulent activities. Kiana was well aware of Rael's infidelity and was tired of being silent and forgiving. Eventually, they decided to divorce, with Rael falsely accusing Kiana of infidelity to justify the split. Devastated, Kiana knew that their family and friends were oblivious to the couple's problems, as Ryle had carefully concealed the truth to protect his reputation. On October 20th, just 10 days after Ryle filed for divorce, Kiana appeared on live TV, looking uncharacteristically somber. Her usual bright smile had given way to an expression of concern and sadness. After divorcing his first wife, Ryle Burns had remarried Kiana, a successful and wealthy woman. He had reinvented himself as a devout guru, presenting a changed and reliable image. But beneath the facade, he remained the same, exploiting Kiana's trust and wealth by pretending to be a successful businessman. On November 9, 2021, 44-year-old Kiana Burns ended her tumultuous marriage by fatally shooting her husband, 46-year-old Ryle Burns, before taking her own life. The couple, who left behind 8 children, had no reported history of domestic violence at their Atlanta home, according to the Sandy Springs Police Department. Just a few weeks prior to the tragedy, Kiana had reached out to her Facebook friends, asking for their prayers. The motivations behind her devastating decision remain unclear, but it's evident that the strong-willed woman was struggling with inner turmoil. It's difficult to comprehend the actions of someone grappling with depression and other mental health issues. The aftermath of this tragedy is equally heartbreaking, as 8 young lives are now left to navigate the world without parental guidance. The news of the couple's passing has sent shockwaves through their extensive network of friends and acquaintances. Ryle Burns was the type of person who felt compelled to show off his success and luxury, often a trait of the deeply insecure. He became so enamored with his own self-confidence that he mistakenly equated it with self-importance. His tumultuous behavior ended up ruining the lives of multiple diligent and successful women. Individuals like him have no self-respect and no dignity. They are essentially ordinary swindlers who bring their partners down. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Young. Jason Young comes from Brevard, North Carolina, where he was born in 1974. He grew up in an ordinary family. After graduating from high school, he became a student at the prestigious state university in the capital of his native state, the city of Raleigh. And after graduating, got a job as a salesman in a large retail chain. At work, Jason Young proved himself to be a valuable and promising employee who could always be relied on. But friends spoke of him as a man who was windy and fickle in relations with the opposite sex. He was fickle and often changed women, for which he got a reputation as a womanizer, which, however, he himself was even proud of. Michelle Marie Fisher was born in New York in February 1977. She was raised with her younger sibling, Meredith, with whom they were very close from childhood. Their mother, Linda, spent a lot of time with her adored daughters, tried to support them in everything, and contributed to the development of their abilities and talents. Since her school years, Michelle was fond of law and economics, dreaming of linking her life with this very activity. After graduating from school, she applied to several universities at once, and soon received a positive answer from the capital of North Carolina. The girl diligently studied at the Faculty of Economics and Law, receiving a master's degree in this field. After receiving her diploma, Michelle was hired for a high position in one of the leading accounting firms in the state. Yesterday's student was earning well, fully supporting herself, and making big plans for the future. She decided to celebrate her 24th birthday at one of the most popular entertainment venues in the city with her close friends and colleagues. They were heartily enjoying themselves when some stranger awkwardly turned around and knocked a glass with a cocktail out of the birthday girl's hands. The guy immediately started apologizing and, to make amends, bought Michelle another cocktail. That young man was Jason Young, and the pretty young Michelle immediately caught his eye. He sat down at her table and started a casual conversation, joked a lot, tried to be witty and interesting, and at the end of the evening asked her out on a date. Michelle also liked the casual acquaintance, so she willingly accepted his invitation. deciding that it was fate itself made her a gift on her birthday. The couple began to communicate, and soon they realized that they had a lot in common. They both studied at the same university. Although Jason got his degree 3 years earlier, supported the same hockey team, and were fans of the same music group. Between young people quickly began a romantic relationship. But to live together, let alone get married, was out of the question at the start of his relationship with Michelle. Jason was still living at his parents' house in Brevard, and he would only visit his girlfriend in Raleigh on weekends or meet with her during work trips to the state capital. During one of these meetings, his sweetheart informed him that she was pregnant. This news was a real shock for both of them because neither of them was ready for the birth of a child. They were focused on their careers, confidently climbing the ladder, and did not plan to start a family yet. Jason said so at once, but after some hesitation, Michelle decided that she would not have an abortion and would keep the baby. Jason took about a month to rethink the situation, after which he moved to Raleigh to be near his pregnant girlfriend. After a few more months, the couple officially legalized their relationship, not out of love or pregnancy, but due to Michelle's lack of health insurance. Childbirth would have cost the couple a considerable amount of money, but marriage gave them the opportunity to avoid such expenses. The couple's daughter, Young, was born in the spring of 2004. She was given the name Cassidy Elizabeth. The newly married mother went headlong into domestic life and family chores, and her mother and younger sister helped her with this. It should be noted that Michelle's family coolly accepted her chosen one. They were wary of Jason, but tried to avoid conflicts. In the same year, they with a child moved to their own large house located in a quiet and landscaped area of the city. Mother Linda, who came to visit her daughter and granddaughter and help with the household, was the first to notice that there was a certain tense atmosphere in this family. Son-in-law Jason was too emotional and could potentially cause a strain right on the spot. But Michelle made every effort to resolve all the argumentative. In public, she behaved like the happiest wife and mother. Only Mother Linda could honestly describe what was truly occurring. An ominous omen occurred when Cassidy was barely 2 years old. Michelle became pregnant again, and she broke the news to her spouse, but he reacted calmly and seemed even happy about it. Soon, the family traveled by car to Brevard to personally inform Jason's parents of the happy news. They came to visit only for the weekend, and on the first day, they celebrated the upcoming addition to their circle of relatives. The next day, leaving their young daughter with her grandparents for a couple of hours, the couple went to a restaurant to celebrate the event together. As the couple was driving home, Jason, who was at the wheel, excessive steering, and the car went off the road and into a ravine. The couple were shaken but sustained only a few abrasions and bruises, and their lives were not in danger. However, Michelle had a miscarriage. Jason, on the other hand, took the news surprisingly calmly. The accident, the loss of a child, and some strange indifference of the husband, all this looked very suspicious. Later, Linda Fisher would call that accident a bad omen that no one paid proper attention to at the time. They had a mutual friend named Michelle Manny, whom they had known since their days at the same university. For some time, they did not see each other, but in the spring of 2006, shortly before the accident, Jason, during a work trip, accidentally met an old acquaintance. He told his wife about it, and together they decided to invite Manny to visit him. The young woman willingly accepted the invitation, but during her visit, she began to complain about her unhappy family life and problems in her relationship with her husband. At the same time, she constantly praised Jason and told his wife how lucky she was. Jason had frequently flirted with various women in the past, but this particular relationship quickly evolved beyond mere flirtation and friendly support. Jason Young and Michelle Manny started calling each other almost daily and secretly meeting up. Jason consistently explained his absences as being due to business trips, and his wife remained unaware of the truth. In the summer of 2006, Michelle informed her husband that she was pregnant again, but this time Jason was not happy at all. The wife did not understand what was happening. She felt that the beloved was away from her, but believed that this was due to the miscarriage that occurred a few months ago. Jason himself all this time was thinking hard about how to get rid of marital bonds with the least loss to himself. In early November, when Michelle was 5 months pregnant, her husband had another business trip. He traveled 300 miles away from home in his own car, but had booked a hotel room about halfway through the trip. That evening, a pregnant Michelle had a long conversation with her best friend on the phone, telling her about problems in the family and mentioning that she had had a big fight with her husband the night before he left. After the conversation, she went upstairs, put her daughter to bed and fell asleep next to her. About 10 in the evening, Jason reached the hotel and, as he claimed to be tired from the road, went straight to bed. In reality, he was scrutinizing all the entrances, exits, and the location of the security cameras, planning how to leave the hotel and then return undetected, preparing an ironclad alibi for what he thought would be the perfect crime. In the early morning hours, Jason called his wife's sister to ask for help. He said he wanted to give his wife a piece of jewelry for their wedding anniversary, but he had accidentally sent a page from an online store to the home fax machine. He worried that Michelle would see his gift and there would be no surprise. Meredith, though she disliked her son-in-law, still agreed to help him. The police chiefs of Wake County received a 911 call at 1:30 p.m. from 5108 Birchleaf Drive, the Enchanted Oaks area, after Meredith Fisher found her sister Michelle lying face down in a pool of blood in her bedroom. Fisher told the 911 dispatcher that she thinks her sister is dead. It looks like there are bloody footprints all over the house, like the little footprints of Michelle's daughter. Michelle Young died from severe injuries, having been struck in the head at least 10 times during a struggle. When Meredith arrived at her sister's house, she entered through a secret door in the garage that only family members knew about, and that was always unlocked. The house was suspiciously quiet, although the landlady's papers, keys, and wallet were in the hallway, indicating that she hadn't gone anywhere. When she went upstairs, Meredith saw that the bedroom door was wide open, but neither her sister nor her niece answered her call. When she walked into the room, she was met with a horrifying sight. Michelle lay on the floor next to the bed with a fractured skull, in a pool of her own blood. Blood was everywhere. On the walls, the furniture, and bloody child-sized footprints were visible next to the body. Sadly, there was nothing that could be done for the pregnant woman, as she had been dead for hours. Her sister quickly called for emergency assistance. Suddenly, she heard rustling under the bed, looked there, and saw little Cassidy, who looked at her incomprehensibly. Cassidy was not hurt, but she was frightened. The girl saw her mother's death and afterwards spent many hours by her body, as evidenced by the marks on the floor as well as the toys she brought to her mother. Later, forensic experts found a huge number of bruises, abrasions, and fractures on the body of the deceased, which spoke of a long and brutal beating. Michelle's teeth were knocked out, and her skull was fractured with a blunt, heavy object. Later, this instrument of crime was never found. A bloody pillow was lying next to the body, and the marks indicated that the victim had been smothered with it. Nothing was stolen from the house, which means that the night visitor had only one goal: murder. In addition, the locks had not been broken, and there were no signs of forced entry, indicating that the perpetrator had a key or knew about the secret door, which again was known only to family members. In such cases, the main suspect is typically the spouse of the deceased, but in this instance, the individual had an apparently flawless alibi. He asserted that he checked into his hotel room and did not depart until the following morning, when he attended a scheduled business meeting. A review of the records confirmed that Jason had used his room keycard in the evening to enter and in the morning to exit. However, a thorough investigation subsequently uncovered a multitude of irregularities and contradictions. For example, a hotel employee discovered early in the morning that the emergency exit was not only open, but also propped up with a cobblestone to prevent the door from slamming shut. When the investigation decided to check the surveillance camera pointed at that door to find out who had done it, it turned out that this very same camera had been deliberately disabled on the night of the crime. Moreover, it stopped recording about half an hour after Jason checked into his room. The weirdness didn't end there. It turned out that during the night, a man who looked like Jason was getting gas at a station between the hotel and the crime scene, but during the night, he was asked to provide identification as per the rules. He refused to do so, paid cash, and without waiting, quickly left the gas station. The attendant at the inquest identified Jason Young, but the man continued to deny everything, insisting that he had slept in his hotel room during the night. Another oddity was that on the day before the tragedy, Jason called Michelle more than 24 times, and closer to morning, he called his mistress 5 more times, with each conversation lasting no more than 15 seconds. This suggests that Jason was probably panicking, and all of these calls were made outside the hotel, where he, in his own words, had been all night. He was also late for a scheduled business meeting with his partners and looked somewhat confused. However, none of this evidence, either individually or all of them together, proved that Jason had indeed massacred his pregnant wife. Years of investigation and a long-awaited verdict. For almost 3 years, Jason lived the life he'd always lived. Moreover, he achieved custody of his young daughter, which was a serious blow to the relatives of his dead wife. By that time, he stopped hiding his relationship with Manny, who was once friends with the murdered Michelle, which only increased suspicion that it was Jason who committed this brutal crime. Jason was arrested only at the end of 2009, but then, despite the large amount of evidence to prove his guilt, the case failed because the jury did not come to a consensus. However, the case was reopened in 2012 when more evidence was collected, and the testimony of witnesses who saw Jason Young that night outside the hotel in different places, in particular, his rather conspicuous white car, was seen parked on the night of the murder, not far from his own house in an unlit lot, was also included in the case. Also included in the case was the testimony of a child psychologist who told of little Cassidy's strange doll play, during which the girl showed how her daddy spanked her mom, and then she would not get up off the floor. Mani took the stand as a witness in court. She confessed that Jason had cheated on his wife with her, but justified it by saying that he was deeply unhappy in his family life, as he told everyone. Another former mistress of the defendant admitted that she was afraid of his outbursts of anger when he lost control and could hit her. After a long trial, Jason Young was finally found guilty of brutally assaulting his pregnant wife. For this crime, he was sent to prison for life with no right to ever be released. In 2014, convicted Jason filed his first appeal, but it was denied. In 2018, he again asked for a review of his case, but a panel of the State Court of Appeals again denied it. Cassidy was virtually orphaned. Her mother was murdered and her father went to prison for the crime. The girl is being raised by her aunt and maternal grandparents. On November 9, 2006, the body of Michelle Young was laid to rest. This marked the end of a chapter in her life. Michelle Young's death caused a lot of commotion and uproar in the community, as the reasons and circumstances leading to her death. Both locals and strangers felt saddened and outraged that a precious life had departed so suddenly. Shafilea Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilea's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally hailed from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At the age of about 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for employment. While staying there for a while and during work, Iftikhar falls in love with a foreign girl and marries her. Soon he becomes a father, but when he returns to Pakistan and informs his family about his marriage, they do not accept it. Then Iftikhar's family puts heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani girl. Despite Iftikhar's resistance, he eventually succumbs to his family's insistence and he marries a Pakistani girl named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returns to Britain and, after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorces her. Then, after some time, Iftikhar calls his second wife, Farzana, to Britain from Pakistan. After coming to Britain, Iftikhar starts living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It is here that on July 14, 1986, Shafileah Ahmed is born. Shortly after Shafileah's birth, the family moves to the town of Warrington in Britain. It is here that Shafileah completes her early education. During this time, 2 more daughters are born in the family, and Iftikhar's family grows larger. Although this family resides in Britain, on holidays, Iftikhar used to take his wife and all his children to Pakistan for vacation. Now the year had come, 2003, and by now Shafileah Ahmed had also turned 17 and was studying law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafileah and the other children have a break on February 18, 2003, Shafileah comes to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During their trip to Pakistan, this family also participates in a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after this wedding, a major incident occurs with Shafileah. She accidentally drinks fennel floor cleaner. Actually, fennel is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors in homes. Now, because fennel is made by mixing some chemicals and soap, drinking it causes severe pain in Shafileah's throat. The reason behind Shafileah drinking fennel is initially said to be because her parents pressured her into arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Because of this pressure, Shafileah drank the fennel intending to end her life. But later, her parents claimed that someone had poured fennel into an old bottle of water, kept in the same bottle usually used for drinking water, and in the darkness of the night, Shafileah mistook fennel for water and drank it. Due to this mistake, Shafileah had to endure a lot of pain. As a result, she's admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Now, because Shafileah's injury was quite severe, she has to stay in the hospital for a long time. During this time, the holidays of other family members also end, so Iftikhar takes his 2 children and wife back to Britain, while Shafileah has to stay in Pakistan for treatment. However, shortly after, Iftikhar arranges for Shafileah's return as well, and on May 27, 2003, Shafileah returns to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shafileah is admitted to a hospital for treatment through an ambulance. After several months of treatment, Shafileah's throat heals considerably, and now she rejoins college. Alongside college, she also starts a part-time job. But on September 18, 2003, a college teacher notices that Shafileah Ahmed hasn't been coming to college for the past week. Attempts are made to contact Shafileah via phone, but she cannot be reached. When teacher asked about this to Shafileah's parents, they reveal that Shafileah has not been home for the past week. Their daughter has been missing for a week, and her parents hadn't filed any complaints about her yet, which strikes Shafileah's teacher as very strange. Immediately after this, they inform the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrives at Shafileah's house for investigation, and questioning begins with her parents. Shafileah's parents say that they last saw Shafileah at their home on September 11, 2003, and since then, she hasn't been seen. Upon this, the police ask, "When your daughter has been missing for a week, why haven't you filed a complaint with the police yet?" To this, Shafileah's parents respond, "This is not the first time Shafileah has been missing from home for a few days. It has happened several times before." To confirm this, when the police check the records, it is revealed that Shafileah has been missing from home several times in the past. The first time was when Shafileah was only 12 years old. She went missing with her younger sister on March 10, 1998. Because of this, her parents had also filed a missing report for both their daughters with the police. However, at that time, Shafileah returned home with her sister as evening approached. According to records, Shafilea ran away from home for the second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmad, filed a missing report for his daughter. After extensive searching, Shafilea was found by the police sitting in a park. According to police records, for the third time, Shafilea left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. This time, Shafilea did not return home for 2 days, and then on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphaned people and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report was filed, the police officer spoke with Shafilea Ahmed and her parents, and after everything was cleared up, Shafilea returned home. After this, on February 18, 2003, Shafilea, along with her 2 sisters and parents, goes to Pakistan for a family function and disappears from there shortly after returning to Britain. Now, looking at old records, the police also suspect that Shafilea Ahmed may have gone somewhere again this time and will return home in a few days. Therefore, the police try to find Shafilea in all those places where she could have gone. However, even after a few days, the police cannot find any trace of Shafilea from anywhere. Considering Shafilea's history of running away from home before, the police show a little laziness in the investigation this time. After this, some local media start making an issue out of the police's laziness. As a result, demand for a thorough search for Shafilea increases at the local level. Due to the progress in the Shafilea missing case, the police accelerate their investigation. Subsequently, they discover numerous poems written by Shafia at her home, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafilea Ahmed. The police were engaged in efforts to locate Shafilea. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the famous Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. When the floods were under control, the body of a girl were found in extremely poor condition on the banks of this river. The distance between the place where the body was found and where Shafilea Ahmed had disappeared was 70 miles. But still, the police have doubts whether this corpse could be Shafilea's. However, to confirm this, DNA samples are collected from the dead body and then matched with the DNA of Iftikhar and Fazan. In this case, a major twist occurs when a body washed away in the flood matches with the DNA samples of Iftikhar. This meant that the body washed away from the river was not someone else's but Shafilea Ahmed's, meaning in the search for Shafilea Ahmed, whom the police had been looking for the past year, now reaches the police itself in the form of a corpse. Now, the biggest question in front of the police was who and why murdered Shafilea Ahmed. However, even before the statements and actions of corpse's parents, there were doubts, and in 2003, these 2, along with 5 others, were arrested. Therefore, once again, Shafilea's parents are arrested and questioned. The trial of this case is also going on, but even this time, no allegations can be proven against them, which leads the police to release them again. However, after that, the police detain some other suspects and proceed with the investigation against all of them. But despite many efforts, the police cannot reach the murderer. As time passes, people slowly start to forget about Shafilea Ahmed's case. Shafilea disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, it had been 7 years since Shafilea's death. By now, Shafilea's family had also moved on from the incident and had become busy with their daily lives. But then, on August 25, 2010, a major theft occurs at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the center of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Due to this, when theft occurs in this house, it starts making headlines on the front page of newspapers. But once again, this puts heavy pressure on the police. Despite working honestly, the police quickly get involved in the search for the thief. After many days of hard work, the police make a revelation that surprises everyone. Actually, the police arrest not someone else, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft in the house. In fact, Alicia was Shafilea's younger sister. According to Alicia, she didn't get as much money from home as she demanded and needed. Because of this, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money at her own home. However, the police had solved the theft case very quickly. But the police spot an opportunity here and now. They start talking to Alicia about her sister Shafilea, who disappeared many years ago, and reopen the file related to the Shafilea case. In the initial conversation, the police suspect that Alicia knows something about the disappearance of Shafilea that the world is still unaware of. The police officers try to uncover what happened with Shafilea, but Alicia refuses to cooperate with them. However, the police then tell Alicia, "You have orchestrated a theft in your own house, which could lead to a long prison sentence for you. But if you can provide any information about Shafilea that nobody else knows, your sentence could be significantly reduced." Afterwards, when Alicia reveals some details to the police, everyone is left stunned. Alicia explains, "It was not someone else but my father, Iftikhar, and my mother, Farzana Ahmed, who had beaten Shafilea Ahmad in front of all of us sisters. Then our father put polythene on her face, and due to suffocation, she was dead. Then he placed Shafilea's body in his car and threw it into the distant jungle. However, due to the flood, the body drifted to the riverbank from the jungle." According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzara did not like their daughter's modern lifestyle at all. On the surface, Shafilea started falling in love with a boy, and when this matter comes to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly try to arrange Shafilea's marriage with their preferred boy. When the family goes to Pakistan for a family function, there is an attempt to forcefully marry Shafilea to a boy there, but Shafilea refuses to marry for this reason, and she consumes fennel. After that, her health deteriorates, and her marriage does not happen either. When Shafilea returns to Britain, her family members here also insist on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. But when Shafilea repeatedly refuses this marriage, her father gets angry, and at first beats Shafilea in anger and then covers her face with a polythene bag, and then due to suffocation, Shafia Ahmad dies here. But immediately after this disclosure, Alicia Ahmed becomes a government witness in the case. In exchange, she is assured a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzana and Iftikhar are arrested, and then a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both of them remain in jail for several months after the arrest. However, nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. In the further investigation, the police gather some crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case begins in the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder, but when Farzana begins to suspect that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she finally accepts in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilea Ahmed's murder was not committed by anyone else but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she tried to stop Iftikhar, but instead, Iftikhar beat and threatened her family, saying, "If any of you ever talk about this to anyone, your fate will be just like Shafilea's." Now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Besides, the police who gather evidence also indicate that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilea, then threw her body far into the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck that area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilea's body drifted and reached the riverbank on its own. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body after the murder. They are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also proven in court that this was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilea Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. So with this, the case of Shafilea Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature also desired that Shafilea Ahmed receive justice and her killers be punished. Therefore, albeit late, Shafilea's parents, her murderers, are also sentenced. If you appreciate our efforts, like and share this video. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Elizabeth Arellano. In the spring of 2016, in the peaceful town of Fort Worth, there was a brutal and cynical murder that even surprised the most experienced investigators. The victim of the crime was a young mother of many children named Elizabeth Poulet Arellano, who worked as a paramedic. It is shocking to discover who her executioner was. The circumstances surrounding the tragic incident were quite puzzling, leading the police to initially consider the possibility that Elizabeth may have passed away of her own volition. However, this theory was contradicted by the accounts provided by accidental witnesses who observed the horrific scene. The investigation required extensive efforts to thoroughly understand the events and bring the perpetrator to justice. Despite the brutality of the crime committed, many felt that the sentence imposed was overly lenient and unjust. Elizabeth Poulet Arellano was born on August 16, 1987, in the American city of Fort Worth, Texas, where she was destined to live all her short life. She grew up with her two sisters, Alessandra and Giovanna, with whom she was always practically inseparable. Elizabeth's birth father left the family when she was very young and showed no interest in the fate of his daughter, not contacting her in any way. Soon, her mother Juanita remarried a man named Fidel, who adopted her children and treated them as his own. Elizabeth had a very warm relationship with her stepfather, who supported and helped her in everything. She studied diligently at school and dreamed of one day becoming a doctor. In high school, she met a man named Rudolph Arellano, with whom she soon entered a romantic relationship. The young man was almost 8 years older than her, which somewhat embarrassed Elizabeth's parents. But they did not interfere with their romance, because the chosen partner seemed to them a serious and quite reliable man. At the age of 16, shortly after finishing school, Elizabeth married her partner. Legally, the couple had 4 children, one after the other, 3 sons and a daughter. However, despite the presence of multiple heirs, Elizabeth did not intend to become a homemaker. She recalled her childhood aspiration, so Elizabeth completed medical school and secured employment as a paramedic with the intention of pursuing further education to become a physician. The young woman was kind and devout, raised in the Christian faith. She took her children to church regularly, instilling in them a love and compassion for their fellow human beings. Family and friends described her as a very caring person, always willing to lend a helping hand. From the outside, their marriage with Rudolph appeared strong and happy, but after 13 years of living together, this union began to show signs of strain. Rudolph had been jealous of his young wife earlier, trying to control every aspect of her life, but over time, his behavior became simply intolerable. In the spring of 2016, Elizabeth, after another jealousy scene organized by her husband, took the children and moved to her parents' house. Rudolph made an attempt to reconcile with his wife, but the young woman was tired of tolerating his outbursts of anger. Additionally, she did not want the children to listen to their parents' arguments almost every day, so she gathered her courage and officially filed for divorce. A few days after Elizabeth took the children and filed for divorce, she mysteriously disappeared. According to friends and family, she was in good spirits and, in order to distract herself from family problems and the impending divorce, decided after work to go with colleagues to a local club. So on the evening of April 15, 2016, the 28-year-old woman, accompanied by her friends, went to a fun place. There she danced and enjoyed herself, but did not consume any alcohol because she intended to drive home in her own car, which she had used to arrive at the club. Elizabeth returned home well past midnight on April 16th. After parking the car, she called her friend with whom she had spent the evening at the club and told her that she had already reached home and was doing fine. Elizabeth then hung up the phone but never went inside the house. The next morning, Juanita, her mother, was very worried when she found that her daughter was not home. She knew that Elizabeth had planned to spend the evening with friends, but her daughter should have returned a long time ago. Elizabeth could not have left somewhere without informing anyone, and besides, her car was parked outside the house, which meant that she had returned from the club. When Juanita approached the car, she found that it was not locked. The key remained in the ignition, and her daughter's purse and phone lay on the vacant seat. Naturally, she could not leave her personal effects unattended in the unlocked vehicle, implying something dreadful had transpired. She promptly contacted the authorities, reporting a missing person. The police were confident they could swiftly resolve the matter, as they say, while fresh. Furthermore, there was still hope Elizabeth was alive, as the car showed no signs of blood or struggle. Yet, the situation was far from straightforward. The investigation started by meticulously reconstructing the timeline of events on the evening and night in question, tracing Elizabeth's entire route to find and question all potential witnesses, beginning with the friends and colleagues she had spent time with before her disappearance. They provided the exact time when she returned home, and later, Elizabeth herself had called to confirm her safe arrival. Additionally, several calls and messages from her ex-husband, Rudolph Arellano, who had repeatedly attempted to reach her that night, were found on the missing person's phone, but Elizabeth had not responded to any of them. Police officers went to Rudolph's house to find out where he was and what he was doing the previous evening and night. According to him, he had been in contact with his ex-spouse just the night before, and she had promised that she would bring the children to him for the weekend. But afterward, she stopped answering the phone, and he thought she had changed her mind. As for an alibi, Arellano's alibi was questionable. According to him, he sat with a friend at a local bar that evening, and around midnight, he returned to his home and went to bed. His friend and several other people who had been relaxing at the same establishment on Friday confirmed that Rudolph was indeed there, but where he went afterward, no one could say for sure. He assured that he had gone home, but as he now lived alone, there was no one to confirm this. Thus, the police were not going to exclude Mr. Arellano from the list of suspects. Besides, he didn't seem upset or worried. It was clear that he and Elizabeth were in the process of divorce, but they had been married for many years, and she was the mother of his children, and it was strange that her disappearance had not affected him in any way. On the night of the disappearance of Elizabeth, a fisherman called the emergency services to report a strange incident he had witnessed. He said that he was sitting alone with a fishing rod on a bridge, which is part of an interstate highway, when about 4:30 o'clock in the morning, he noticed a car drive onto the bridge, stop, and then the driver pulled out something large that looked like a person and threw it into the water. It also appeared to him that something bulky and obviously heavy was tied to this person. Since the fisherman was at a great distance and it was still dark, he could not see details, nor could he see the make and number of the car. In addition, there was a strong wind on the bridge, so he could not hear anything. Soon, another witness was found, walking at night with his dog down by the bridge. He did not see what was happening on the bridge itself, but a heartbreaking scream caught his attention. Then he saw something large flying down from the bridge, followed by a splash, and then silence. Based on the testimony of witnesses, the police decided to examine the bottom of the pond near the bridge. A few hours later, divers came across a body with a massive piece of concrete tied to its neck with a rope. The drowned woman turned out to be the missing Elizabeth Arellano. Had it not been for the testimony of a passerby and a fisherman, her body would probably have been discovered very soon or not found at all, because the tide weight did not allow the body to float. Then, a theory was put forward that the young woman decided to leave her life voluntarily, against the background of problems in the family. But this assumption was untenable, because it did not fit with the testimony of a witness who saw how someone threw her into the water, nor with the words of relatives who assured that Elizabeth made great plans for life and would never do this to her children and parents. Elizabeth was still alive when a piece of concrete was tied to her neck and thrown off the bridge. This was evidenced by the forensic medical results, which showed that the young woman had suffocated, and by the testimony of a man who heard her desperate scream as she flew down the bridge. However, the question remained as to who and for what reason could have so brutally murdered a mother of many children. Robbery was not considered because none of Elizabeth's belongings were taken. There were suggestions that the killer could have spotted Elizabeth in the club and then followed her home, or someone could have been guarding her at home, waiting for her to return. The ex-husband of Elizabeth, Rudolph, continued to insist that he was sleeping at his home on the night of the murder and had nothing to do with the crime. However, the investigators were still in no hurry to exclude Rudolph from the list of suspects because he had no alibi, and his behavior raised more and more questions. At the funeral, Rudolph displayed an emotional performance, weeping at the coffin of his ex-wife and expressing a desire to be in her place or die alongside her. According to his sister, Elizabeth, he even believed the sincerity of his own words. Additionally, Rudolph actively assisted in the establishment of a charitable foundation to raise funds for the farewell ceremony for his wife. However, after the funeral, when he was once again called to testify, he already looked and behaved completely different, as if nothing bad had happened in his life. The investigation determined that a car of the same make and color as Rudolph's had driven away from Elizabeth's parents' house around 3 a.m. The neighbor also recalled seeing the car parked on the road near Elizabeth's house, and it was established that the car had subsequently driven towards the very bridge from which she had been thrown. When the investigation requested Rudolph's cell phone data for the night of the crime, the questions became even more complex. It turned out that he made several calls that night, first near Elizabeth's workplace, and then near the home of his mother-in-law and father-in-law. He also sent his ex-wife several messages, trying to find out when she would return, but his messages went unanswered. The police finally had enough evidence to arrest Rudolph as the prime suspect and bring him to the station for further questioning. One of the key witnesses in the case was Elizabeth and Rudolph's eldest son, who stated that he had seen the rope removed from his mother's neck earlier in the backyard of his father's house and recognized a piece of concrete that had been lying in their garden shortly before. The investigation found that Rudolph waited for his ex-wife at her parents' home and abducted her before she could enter the house. He forced her into his car, in the trunk of which he had already prepared rope and concrete, and then drove to the bridge for the massacre, expecting to go unnoticed. Despite a large amount of evidence and witness testimony proving his guilt, Rudolph denied any involvement in the crime and continued to insist that he was at home that night. Given the brutality of his actions, Rudolph was facing the ultimate penalty of death, and then, on the advice of his lawyer, he decided to confess to everything and cooperate with the investigation to mitigate the sentence. In January 2019, Arellano pleaded guilty in court and detailed how he kidnapped and murdered his ex-wife and the mother of their 4 children. Juanita, who was in the courtroom listening to his story, fainted, and Alessandra and Giovanna called their sister's killer a monster. Rudolph himself, though he admitted his guilt, felt no remorse or pangs of conscience. He spoke differently and coldly about his murder, did not apologize, and did not explain the motive for his terrible act. The court sentenced the murderer to life in prison without parole. Elizabeth's family members, although they considered such a sentence rather mild, noted that they forgive Rudolph because they do not want their hearts to boil with hatred. Her parents and sisters are now responsible for the upbringing of Elizabeth woman's children. Even though Elizabeth is no longer here, everyone in her family and community will always remember her. She was a lovely, lovely mother. I want to say a lovely daughter too. She was basically my daughter. She had the ultimate respect for me, as I did for her, said her stepfather Fidel Galvan in 2016.